council. Major discussion is the whole restructuring of the California government, where the new convention has been proposed. But I do expect my colleagues to join me any moment now. The council members Dennis Zion and Councilor Jose Rizar. What I'd like to do, and I'll just be very blunt about this, we'll buy some time. Thank you, Gail, for joining us. And what I'd like to do is just go through some of the housekeeping. And from there, we'll ask the folks who are before us as candidates for commissioners. So as you can tell, the acoustics are not the best in this room. When a person is speaking, it's very hard to hear when there are other conversations. So we have other conversations going on as deliberations are being conducted. It's hard to listen. So please, out of courtesy, take your conversations outside so that way we can hear the speaker and the discussion going on in committee. When you do come up to the microphone, please give us your name and address. I know some of you have written very eloquent letters. Some items will be 1 minute, others will be 2 minutes, depending on the number of cards we have. So just stay focused on the main points of the letter. It's frequently we see a person starting down the letter and they're 3/4 way, they haven't got to the point and they're rushing. So get to your point as quick as you can. If your previous speaker has already made that point, it's okay to say agree or disagree and add new points. So that way we don't hear the same thing over and over again. That being said, I'd like to ask Ms. Yolanda Orozco if she can come up to the microphone. She is being considered for City Planning Commission citywide for the term ending June 30th, 2014. Good afternoon, Ms. Orozco. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Reyes. My name is Yolanda Orozco. I reside at 4440 Cromwell Avenue in Los Angeles, California. And I'm very happy to be here today.
First, I want to thank you for stepping up to the plate, donating your time and expertise, and responding to planning and land use issues of the city. I've been just joined by Councilman Rizar. Welcome, Councilmember. And I just want to ask you, at the end of this experience, if we were to look back, what would you like to see, or what is it that would make you feel like I did what I wanted, I feel like I was able to accomplish X? Is there anything in particular or specifically through policy or through environmental changes that you would like to walk away with?
Well, I think, as I told you, Council Member, when we met yesterday, I do not have a great deal of expertise in planning issues, although I'm an attorney. That's not been my area of practice. However, I think I'm an informed resident of Los Angeles. I care deeply about the city, having now resided in Los Angeles, I think upwards of 27 years. I would like at the end of my tenure to be known as someone who was independent, who tried to do the right thing for all the stakeholders of Los Angeles. I understand that planning issues are extraordinarily complex, and there are indeed many constituencies, but I still believe, and maybe it's a naive belief, but I still believe that government can take care of its people, and I believe that the city of Los Angeles, along with its government, its planning department, its commissioners, can do the right thing and try to take into account all of the needs and desires of the various communities and the various constituencies of the city of Los Angeles. And I hope that at the end of my tenure, I've been able to do the right thing for all of them, as difficult as that may sound at this point from where I stand.
Thank you, Ms. Orozco, for your diligence in your resume, an outstanding experience in many different fields dealing with the law. And I thank you for your contribution. Colleagues, any questions from our candidate? Seeing none, I'd like to move that we recommend Mr. Orozco for this position. Have a second? Second. And it's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Mr. Orozco, and we'll be seeing you in front of the City Council.
I expect so. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Lydia D. Mather for the South Valley Area Planning Commission, term ending on June 30th, 2014. Lydia Mather. Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, and good afternoon to you, Councilman Reyes, and Ms. Goldberg. It's good to see you again. Thank you. And Mr. Zine and Mr. Huizar.
I'd like to ask you the same question. When you're done with this experience, what would you like to have achieved, and anything else you would like to share with the committee?
I think at the end of the day, my primary concern is finding an intelligent balance between the basic expectations that people that live in this city have for a consistency in their community with some kind of progress to see those things happen, but certainly to protect hardworking people, and the investment that they make in this city is a very important thing to me.
In terms of housing and understanding the question, where will people live? In terms of that balance, how do you see the whole dynamic of access and affordability and compatibility with neighborhoods? What's your reaction to a statement like that?
Well, I think that there are some things that have already been done, like our small lot ordinance and some apartment housing kind of things mixed with R1. I think what I don't like is to ever see ghettos happen. Housing developments, just particularly for the poor. I think if you have a various sizes of things in a small community, you create more of a village. You create something that encompasses both people that are a little better heeled with people that are not so wealthy, and that to me is the perfect kind of balance where everybody can kind of be together and work together on that.
I agree with you. We should be decentralizing
Absolutely.
these concentrations of poverty, and there's different policy methods. There's a toolbox we can sharpen and improve upon, and I look forward to working with you in that effort. That being said, colleagues, any questions from our candidate? So now we have a motion. Okay, I'd like to second that. Let the committee show that we support Ms. Mathers and her candidacy, and we'll be seeing you in front of the council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, what I'd like to do is go through the items that will be continued, so that way folks who are waiting for these items don't have to hold on longer. So item 4 will be continued for 1 month. Item 5 will continue to November 24th, here in this committee, and council December 8th. Item 6 will continue to October 6th, here in this committee, and council October 14th. Item 9 will continue November 17th. This committee and the council on December 15th. Now, as a general policy, when we have cases that involve the police department and we have officers here that should be out in the field, we try to take those first. So I understand that item 7, do we have the officer here on item 7? Okay, so we'll take you item first, sir, to make sure we get you back out on the field. Well, that's what we want to summarize item 7, please.
Yes, council members. Item 7 is an appeal filed by Vermont Liquor Market. It has to do with a decision of the ZA that found that the liquor store constituted a nuisance. This is a nuisance abatement case.
Okay. Good day, officer.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Officer Shea. I'm the senior lead officer at 77th Division, and the liquor store in question has been in my area. I really appreciate this opportunity. Hoping that this is coming to a culmination of 6 years of work saying the same thing over and over. I've provided numerous copies to the city attorney. I've done abatement with the ABC. Advice has gone out there. The liquor store problems have continued. They have not improved. I have here for the council's permission a list of 6 reports, 2 of which were made yesterday for drinking in public and narcotics violations. The liquor store has a problem of being sold frequently as the conditions are being imposed. We've had several hearing measures on this, and all of them seem to get lost in the cracks. I'm hoping that this opportunity will be starting of the finish. There's no way that I can honestly say there's any improvement. There's no way I can tell you this liquor store will positively affect the community, and there's no way the loss of this liquor store is going to impact the community. So empirically, I want to say, no, it's time to go. Everybody's done their homework. Folks, please, can we put an end to this finally? And who would like the reports?
Thank you also for your hard work. Councilor Zahn?
Sir.
Good afternoon. I see you're a senior lead.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been a senior lead?
11 years.
And how long have you been with the LAPD?
23.
And how many years have you been assigned to the area surrounding this particular market?
21 years in 77th, 11 years as a senior lead officer.
So your career's been down in 77th.
I'm a lucky one, sir.
And you've worked this particular situation as a quality of life issue for a long time in your career.
6 years.
And sometimes you wonder if anyone cares, if anything's going to be improved.
Oh, I know people care. I know that. Unfortunately, we're just so big. Sometimes paperwork gets lost, gets misplaced, and appeals go on and on and on. I think at this juncture I can safely say we're pretty close to the end.
And you've been waiting for the end to come for a long time.
Yes, sir, but I'm patient. 7 more to go. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, my vote would be to support you in that endeavor, and I want to acknowledge the Senior Lead Program and what you folks do to help quality of life in the community. And I see when an officer comes to a committee, this committee, or one of the other committees, and testifies, oftentimes they're at their wits' ends and wondering if anything's going to be improved to correct the situation. So I think that the situation obviously hasn't improved, and when they change ownership, they keep on dodging the bullet. So I think that the time has come to support you and the community in the quality of life issue, and I commend you for your diligence and your perseverance to stick with it for so many years, and to commend you, because I worked 77th many years ago.
Yes, sir.
When they had a second story on the building.
Yes, it did.
And they took off the second story. So for all your work, the fine work you do down there. So I would make a recommendation, Mr. Chair, that we approve this and commend the officer for his hard work.
Mr. Zahn, what we'll do is we will hear from a report, for the record, a report from the staff, and a look at the cue cards here and ask if the district office from the council wants to speak and anyone else pertaining to this item. But I want to make sure the officer was able to come first, because I know his time is precious out in the field. So thank you, sir, for all your hard work.
I appreciate it very much, and I was trying to be as succinct as possible.
I think you did a great job. Could I have the staff come up, just give us a summary of this case and your recommendation?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman Reyes, council members. My name is Larry Friedman, Office of Zoning Administration. This has been a nuisance site since 1993, when the initiation of nuisance abatement first began. At the time, it was known as Lucky Liquor, and then in 2006, new owners took over and became Vermont Liquor. This site is probably among the dozen or so top problem sites listed by the Community Coalition. One of the major problems is continuous loitering on 61st Street. The property itself is located at the southwest corner of Vermont and 61st.
4, 5, 6, and 9.
There's reported heavy gang activity in the area. Between March of 07 and February of 09, there are about 25 incidents of arrest. The majority of those were drinking in public or possession of open containers. There were also some narcotics possession and sales arrest, and one felony possession of firearms. As far as compliance with the conditions, there are approximately 12 conditions of the 17 that were not complied with, and others were only partially complied with. In this case, what we are recommending and what the action has already been is to revocate the conditional use permit for the sale of full line of alcoholic beverages. I want to also note that Inspector Dave Hickman from Building and Safety Code Enforcement, who's been out at the site recently, is also here if you wish to hear from him.
Thank you, sir. We'll hear from the appellant, Lee Ambers.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Lee Ambers, California Property Consultants. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. My address is Post Office Box 7570, Van Nuys, California, 91409. This is a case that there's been a lot of misstatements, misaccusations, and has really directed the city in the wrong direction. There have been complaints from a coalition, but at the public hearing, all of the neighbors that spoke at the public hearing supported the liquor store and said that they use it, and that appears in Mr. Friedman's determination that they all support it. They have no problem with this liquor store, and in fact, there have been minor deviations and quite a few arrests, but every arrest, some of them as far as a half a mile away, they use this address and this store gets blamed. Saturday, I happened to be in the neighborhood and I drove down the street, and approximately 5 blocks away is 2 shopping centers with 3 licenses. 2 markets and a drugstore all have full liquor licenses. They have reduction in parking from the zoning administrator's office, and the parking there was abominable. There were people mulling around on all 4 corners of Slauson and Vermont. They were pushing carts, shopping carts down the public streets, which in my opinion is a theft, and nobody ever attacks the big stores. It's only the little guy that gets hurt in the city of Los Angeles. And there's been accusations about the telephone and drugs and things like that. We have security guards, and that place is clean. If you were to go out there, you would not see any problems whatsoever. It is very disturbing that all of the direction is directed towards this store and nobody else in the community, and this cannot be possibly the entire problem within that community. The coalition, the one liquor store, one liquor outlet, a full supermarket called El Super, is located at Slauson, Vermont. One of the contentions in the report is that it was located, the kids going to school and across the street is a library are passing by this location, but yet the city approved a full-service market directly across the street from an elementary school. There's no rhyme or reason. It's very disturbing that that the same rules don't apply to all facilities in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We also, I believe, have Jasdeep Oluwalia. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Attorney for the appellant.
Good afternoon, Jasdeep Oluwalia. I'm the attorney for the...
If you can speak into the microphone so I can hear you better, please.
Yes, Jasdeep, and the last name is Ahluwalia. And by the way, you got my name correct. I have been retained by the liquor store owner to look into allegations of violations that have been laid out in Mr. Friedman's report. I've personally visited the store a couple of occasions, and I've noticed that...
Can I just ask you to either speak closer to the microphone or raise your voice? One or the other.
I've visited the store a couple of occasions, and I've looked at the history of the store that goes back to perhaps 1993, and to me it appears that this particular store is in the crosshairs of the 77th Police Department, District 77th Precinct. The prior problems that existed have largely been eliminated at this location. Arrests have been reported, as Officer Shea indicated, but none have been directed at the liquor store. There are people who may congregate around the liquor store. There is a recycling facility that is within walking distance that attracts people. There are other locations in the immediate vicinity that are also magnets for people who hang around. Liquor, as Mr. Ambers pointed out, there are liquor sales being conducted at various locations within a 3 or 4 block radius. This store seems to be appears to be singled out for no apparent reason. My client has posted a security guard who arrives there at 2 p.m. and is there till closing, and there are no individual sales of liquor items that would be in violation of the city's mandate. So we are not quite sure why the city wants to revoke the CUP. It makes absolutely no sense. My client, who's been at the store for the last 3 years, has complied, I would say, about 95% with all the conditions. And to take away a person's livelihood is not really fair.
Okay, so that's your conclusion?
That's my conclusion.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call up Detective Eric Abinas-Water. He is the Detective 3 with the Police Department. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great. How are you, sir? Thank you for hearing me. I'm Detective Eric Moore. I'm assigned to Detective Support and Vice Division, the Community Problems Unit. We are responsible for investigating ongoing nuisance locations throughout the cities and abating the ongoing issues at locations, especially when traditional enforcement has not been effective. I came before the zoning administrator and testified about the egregiousness at this location. I personally participated in 5 arrests at the location, all on the same day. What makes this location a little different than some of the other liquor stores is that there seems to be a genuine entitlement for posting up or loitering at this location. To make what's significant is that I personally have seen people drive to the location, open their trunk, pull out lawn chairs, put up their crates and set up pretty much a bar on the sidewalk next to this location. I've seen one individual pull a mattress out and lay there. We brought all of these deficiencies to the attention of the owners and the management at the location. The location also housed a slot machine. The parking lot is uncontrolled, or at the time I was there, there was no control over the parking lot. There was habitual loitering. On one instance, when I went out with the building inspector to conduct an investigation, there was so much gang activity, I didn't even feel comfortable allowing him to conduct his investigation and deterred him from being able to conduct his investigation. The ownership of this location and the management has not been responsive nor empathetic to assisting us in remedying any of the issues. Having supervisory responsibility of all the abatements in the city, this liquor store is one of the worst I've ever seen. I would ask that you support the decision of the zoning administrator. Thank you.
Detective Moore, also, every time I do see you, I just want to say thank you for your hard work. You did a great job in Westlake and in the Carthay Park, a tremendous job there, and thank you for your tenacity.
One question.
One question, Detective Moore from Councilman Ryan.
How many years you been on the department?
20 years.
And how long you been working on this assignment?
10 years.
Citywide?
I'm sorry, sir?
Citywide?
Yes, sir.
And is this one of the worst you've seen in your...
Absolutely, without qualification, one of the worst liquor stores I've seen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'd like to call up Christina Thomas, Community Coalition. Christina Thomas, are you here? Come on up. Thank you, sir. Brandy Chappelle. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Council, for having us today. I'm from the Community Coalition. I'm the new nuisance abatement coordinator at the Community Coalition. And I want to say that at the last public hearing, the Community Coalition happened not to be here because we weren't notified about the hearing, or we would have had our members come in full force, because this is a liquor store that we actually started the case around back in we started in 1992, but it started in 1993 with the actual council. And with the history of me working at the Community Coalition, we've worked with so many liquor stores. I've never read a case where there's been 3 sets of conditions imposed on a liquor store. A liquor store that refuses to comply with any conditions, the different parking, the different shopping malls that they're speaking of have security guards. You don't go to those places and see mattresses or see couches where people come and set up, or people are sitting in front of the actual liquor store on the property on couches and nobody is saying anything to them. This is clearly a quality of life issue, and it's been a quality of life issue for over 10 years. And the community wanted to say to the zoning administration, thank you for doing your job, for finally standing up for the community, because we believe that that's what they have done this time, that they have stood up for the community and revoking the CUP, conditional use permit in this area. Because if you go in the area now, you can see the small changes that have happened with their conditional use permit being revoked. They don't, they try not to let things go on like that. But why did it have to come to this for you to have to do that? To stand up for the community, to work for the community. How many years does the community has to suffer for these things going on? They keep passing it to one person, to another person, and then we can't hold the person accountable because they keep passing it to another person. They have loitering as early as 9 a.m., and folks are out there before the store opens up.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment. Our last speaker is Diane Chapel. I hope I didn't mispronounce your last name.
No, it's fine. You can pronounce it either way. My name is Brandy Chappelle, or Chappell, either one, whatever your preference. I am a planning deputy for Councilmember Jan Perry, working out of her office in South Los Angeles, and I'm here to express her full support for Zoning Administrator Friedman in his determination where he established conditions to revoke the conditional use permit for the liquor store in question. And we also fully support Senior Lead Officer Shea, all of the members of the police department and the community coalition that have come here to speak to you today. So the councilwoman would ask that you support her position in supporting Zoning Administrator Friedman and denying the appeal of the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions or motions?
I just want to say for the record, listening to the testimony, it reconfirms my initial observations from the testimony of the senior lead officer that the conditions should be removed, and that it's a nuisance to the community and detracts from the quality of life in the community.
Thanks, Sister. That's a motion. Councilman?
Yes, motion to deny the appeal and revoke the CUP.
Number second, that's unanimous vote, and now the action of this committee. Next, I'd like to ask our planning director, because I don't want to keep her any longer than we have, for her report, and then we'll move on to the other items.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. I know you have a busy day. I wanted to let you know that the fee ordinance that you adopted at City Council unanimously last month will go into effect toward the end of October, on October 26th. I mentioned to you a few weeks ago that the Planning Department's half-hour film on Survey LA had been nominated for an Emmy. We have totally gone Hollywood. We won an Emmy in the arts and culture category, so I'm very pleased. I wanted to let you know that one of our principal planners that had been with the department for many years retired last Friday, Dave Gay. I had mentioned in the past that John Dugan, our deputy director, had taken a job with Fresno as the planning director, and we have recently appointed Jane Blumenfeld as the acting deputy director for the time being. I also wanted to just briefly mention there has been a lot of discussion over the past week around the budget and around the early retirement, And as members of the Plum Committee, I wanted to remind you that the Planning Department is being sort of doubly hit in this sort of citywide solution. We have probably the highest percentage of employees on furlough. 80% of our employees are members of EAA and on furlough, and I believe we probably have the highest percentage of employees that are eligible for early retirement, with 1/3 of our employees being eligible. This ultimately is going to be a significant reduction in our policy program and work program. As you know, we don't have the ability to reduce the 75% of our work program that is case processing, and so the reductions will likely come from policy work program. And I will be meeting with you each and with members of the City Council to talk about what those reductions might look like. But the Planning Department, as I mentioned to you before, is going to concentrate heavily over the next few months on streamlining our case processing, doing code reform, anything that we can find to create efficiencies in case processing will give us more capacity to do the kind of long-range policy planning that's so important to you and to the community. So just a little reminder, we'll talk more.
Thank you, Gail. I know there's a lot on our plate today, but thank you for those efforts. There's a lot to respond and reserve our comments for another committee meeting, but I have been reminding my colleagues that many projects, programs, policies in their districts will be severely impacted with the kinds of shortages we have in our planning staff, and that's something we need to work with and find some solutions and strategies. So thank you very much. Any other comments from colleagues? Okay. That being said, we'll move on to our next item, which is the item that has the most speaker cards. I think you guys know which one that is, right? Items 3A, B, and C. What we'd like to do is we've had several public hearings on this issue, but we do have several cards from individuals and entities that are going to have a dramatic impact on how this policy continues to evolve. So that being said, we're going to take it a little bit out of order. What I like to do is look at 3B and C first, because it speaks to the city attorney's presentation on the revised ordinance, and if we could have that presentation. I recognize we have others, Chief Beck, who is the command staff with us. Thank you, sir, for being here. I also want to thank and recognize several other individuals who are doing their best to find this balancing point. I know that we have with us from the District Attorney's Office, LA County District Attorney John Harlan, who's Deputy District Attorney. We have with us Joseph Esposito, who's also the Head Deputy District Attorney for the county. We have us William Carter, LA City Attorney's Office. And I guess we won't be hearing from Carter Attorneys, is that right? Because I was under the impression he was going to be here. But I guess we'll have Mr. William Carter not that as well. Okay. Then we have Robert, I think it's Shepard, from the Long Beach City Attorney's Office. And we have Tom Reeves, a Long Beach City Prosecutor. So, that being the case, I want to welcome all of you and all of the citizens that's joining us today. We've been trying our best to take this to another threshold of the way of implementation, but again, we're going through this process, and without further ado, I'd like to ask, do you have any questions, colleagues?
Yes, Mr. Chair. There's a number of motions that have been proposed on this item today, and I just want to make it clear what the purpose of today is. Is it just a hearing, or are we going to take some action on any of the items? And in particular, I just received, or my staff just received the ordinance from the City Attorney's Office this morning. We haven't had a chance to review it, so we just want to, I just don't feel prepared to discuss that ordinance. If we get a briefing on it, that's fine, but I just can't, we can't engage, well, at least I can't engage in any discussion on this. So I just want to make it clear what the purpose of today is, just to hear and to get more input on the items before us today.
Fair enough, sir. Several objectives today. One is, on July 26th, I had a conversation with City Attorney Carthay in which it was stated that we get a written response of the ordinance we have been working on for 2 years. 5 years later, we're finding out a place we're getting a written response. And today, I believe we're going to have verbally a presentation because it's been rather difficult to get to that place. So today, with the best intentions and I think goodwill between the various departments, we want to reach that point. So this will be my first time of having this discussion. So today is about listening. It's about understanding where we're taking this policy discussion, the recommendation from the city attorney, and the recommendations from also the efforts of the various offices who have been involved. I know Councilman Zines, your office, and some other offices have been engaging in this discussion. So we're going to take it to the next level of fruition. So this will be my first time that I hear it at this stage, at this level, with all the different nuances that come with this process. I don't expect any decisions to be made today, but I'm hoping this takes us to a place where we can make a decision as soon as possible, because we've been working this issue for almost 2 years now, and we need to reach closure eventually, and that's where we want to be. So this is about understanding and getting a clear picture of where the city attorney is taking this policy matter through their advice.
When does our moratorium run out?
A moratorium, can you speak to that, Madam Attorney?
Jerry Burge, City Attorney's Office. The first interim control ordinance actually expired on September 14th, but the second interim control ordinance extended that ordinance until March, but I'm not exactly sure of the date.
So March 20.
But it is March 2010.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Heather Aubrey, City Attorney's Office. Okay. We do have several speakers, as you've noted. It is your pleasure to hear from the City Attorney's Office initially, and then the elected officials and various other speakers.
Yes, okay. That way we have a context. Given what you will be presenting, then we'll go with the speakers, then we'll follow with the public comment.
Okay. Thank you.
If you mind speaking into the microphone, we'll hear you much better.
Hello. Okay, very good. Heather Aubrey, City Attorney's Office. Today we have transmitted to you a third revised draft ordinance regulating medical marijuana collective cultivation in the City of Los Angeles. Rather than reiterate the provisions of the ordinance which have been contained within the ordinance in the previous drafts, what I'd like to highlight for you today is the sections of the ordinance which are new or substantially different and significantly changed. By way of preface, I would like to say that we have met with the CLA's office. We've discussed their input in that regard. And so some of these changes that you see before you today are incorporating some of that input.
So this is the third version?
Correct.
And these are the highlights of those changes?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. There have been several changes. In the council report accompanying the draft ordinance, I actually did summarize them for you. So what I'd like to do is just briefly go through them. And of course, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them. The most significant change, I think, to point out to you is that the draft ordinance now includes a provision which requires pre-inspection of certain standards. There are certain standards referred to as development standards, which are separated out from the operational standards. Those standards need to be pre-inspected under this ordinance and verified by the Department of Building and Safety, thereby ensuring that these standards are complied with initially before the collective even becomes operational. And again, we're talking about collectives, just to reiterate this point, which is very important, medical marijuana collective cultivation, which is an activity involving the grouping of qualified patients primary caregivers and those with identification cards who can collectively come together under state law to collectively cultivate medical marijuana.
And the key word is qualified patients.
I'm sorry?
Qualified patients.
Qualified patients, correct.
Okay.
So this is a significant addition to the ordinance, which again would require the pre-verification of certain standards that they've been met before such a location can even become operational or actually begin the collective cultivation process. I'd also like to point out to you that there are other provisions which I think bear emphasis. One is that definitions have been clarified and added. We have the removal of certain provisions that had previously been there, including the signage restriction. The lighting standard has been modified pursuant to input from the Department of Building and Safety. I already mentioned that the separation of the regulations into development standards and operational standards has been done, again, to separate out those conditions that need to be pre-inspected and verified. The regulation prohibiting refinement of marijuana and related exemptions has been removed. The regulation prohibiting the provision of medical marijuana to collective members between the hours of 8 o'clock p.m. and 10 o'clock a.m. has been added. The maintenance of records provision has been modified to require documentation of the nature of each member's participation in the collective cultivation and members' contributions and expenditures related to the collective cultivation. The addition of a provision making the refusal to allow inspection of records and inspection of recordings of the recordings of the closed circuit monitoring or falsification of those records is unlawful. Provision has been added that any marijuana cultivation operation or dispensary which was established and operating prior to September 14, 2007, and which registered with the city clerk's office before November 12, 2007, shall have 90 days to achieve compliance with the article. Only those, just to be clear, only those that meet that standard would have 90 days to achieve compliance.
And this is only those who met that time frame that you just stated.
Exactly.
Who will be given 90 days to meet the regulatory standards set by this ordinance.
That's correct.
And all of the other 600 and whatever.
Immediate compliance is what is required for those other locations. Essentially, there needs to be compliance with the provisions when the ordinance goes into effect. At the time of operation of the ordinance, those locations which do not meet this standard, those that, again, had to have registered by a particular date and become operational by a certain date, if they don't meet that standard, then immediate compliance is required.
Okay, now we have over 600 sites that mushroom overnight almost. Do those who do not, do they automatically are eliminated from being able to operate, or are they given time to comply?
Assuming that those locations are not already in compliance with the provisions of the ordinance, then they would not have the 90 days to comply unless, again, they met that standard of having been operating prior to September 14, 2007, or having registered with the city clerk's office prior to November 12, 2007.
So it's a shut down?
Essentially, yes.
Okay. Councilman?
And finally, there have been two additional sections added, which is compliance with the article in state law and violation and enforcement section, which specify the criminal and civil penalties and enforcement actions which a location may be subject to for failure to comply with the article.
Let me, if I could ask, in your revisions of the ordinance, I have several questions. You started with a first draft, correct? Of the ordinance?
Yeah, there have been two prior drafts filed by the city attorney's office. That is correct.
Those were from the city attorney's office?
Correct.
In your revisions or in your drafting of this ordinance, who did you work with? Who did you consult with? Is there a task force? Who are they?
For this particular revision, we particularly met with and discussed the ordinance with the CLA's office.
The CLA's office.
Yes.
So your input on these revisions were from the CLA's office?
Yeah, and just understand, there have been several changes which the office felt were appropriate, regardless of input from any source, from a legal standpoint. We felt were improvements to this ordinance. But certainly, a few of these changes, I can say, did develop from discussions with the CLA's office. And
if I might add, point in fact, in that CLA version, what was included were many discussions and meetings with the medical marijuana advocates, with the various departments, including the city attorney's office, and trying to get to a place of implementation. And there has been almost 2 years' worth of discussion in that regard.
Okay. Now, on the provision that to operate a facility, a dispensary, they would have to have met the September 14th and the November 12th registration date, and they have to comply within 90 days. So the effect of that is that anybody who did not register with the city clerk by November 12th or was in operation September 14th of 2007, anyone after that can't apply?
Yes. Any location that did not meet this standard
Okay.
is, unless in compliance with the provisions already, would be in violation and subject to enforcement action, yes.
Okay, so there will be no new dispensaries after that. It's only those who have applied before these dates.
Well, just to clarify, if I could, please, with respect to dispensaries, I think it's important to emphasize again, this is regulation of collective cultivation activity, which is not the dispensary selling model, okay? And so with respect to any new locations of collective cultivation, engaging in collective cultivation, yes, they would all have to be in compliance with the provisions of this ordinance.
Okay. Well, let me ask the larger question that I thought we were addressing here, which is, we have how many dispensaries in Los Angeles today? We have over 900?
I think we're over 900. I'm not sure it's that many. I've heard that number. I've heard several different numbers. My understanding is it's not actually that high, but...
Yeah, and we have some categories. We have those who have registered by a certain date, and then we have those who have applied through the hardship exemption. What are we doing with those who have registered prior to that date? I'm not sure if it's September or November, that we asked when we put in the ICO. What happens to them?
Well, they would have 90 days. If you're referring to those locations that did register in compliance with the ICO and became operational prior to the date specified in the ICO, which was September 14th, 2007, they would have 90 days to achieve compliance, assuming that they were not already in compliance with the provisions of this ordinance.
Okay, and those are about 600 or so. So we're creating in this ordinance a ministerial action for them to complete, and they automatically get a right to dispense medical marijuana. Now, we have to ask ourselves, do we want 600 dispensaries throughout the city of Los Angeles? That's what we're creating here.
Right. I agree. And from a legal standpoint, the dispensing model is not what this ordinance is regulating. Just again to be clear, we are not talking about a dispensing model. We're talking about a collective cultivation model whereby patients, their caregivers can come together and cultivate medical marijuana for provision to the patients, which is in compliance with state law.
I'll ask my question again. We have those dispensaries that we asked to register with the city of Los Angeles by a certain date. Then we said, if you want to be considered, apply for a hardship exemption where we got, I don't know, 300 more, 400 more. But those who did register with us, we had about 600 or so. How many did we have?
That number, I apologize, if you're referring to the number that had registered and were operational, about 187.
187,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What we're saying through operation of this ordinance, that 187, all they have to do is show compliance within 90 days?
That's correct.
That's what that says?
That's correct.
Okay, and what's the rationale behind that? Why not just say, we're going to open it up, and here are regulations, and those that comply with these regulations could apply, could open up not apply, but open up a dispensary.
Right. Well, certainly, this ordinance will not foreclose any collective cultivation group that wants to come together and essentially begin cultivating to achieve compliance with this ordinance. They're not it's just that those that are already in existence, only those which pre-registered and were operating by this time frame, which is approximately 186, would have the 90 days to achieve compliance with this ordinance.
And none that applied through the hardship exemption?
That is not an exemption.
Councilman Weezer, Deborah Gonzalez from the City Attorney's Office. The only difference is that we are giving the ones who followed all the city procedures by complying with the interim control ordinance, we are giving them a little bit extra time. We're giving them 90 days. Everyone else that did not comply with the interim control ordinance, did not meet those requirements, has to comply immediately with the new ordinance that would be adopted by the council. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what does comply mean?
That means that they would have to meet the development standards to the satisfaction of building and safety, and that they would have to meet all of the operational standards that are contained in the ordinance.
But they'd have no time to convert. They'd have to do it immediately.
They would have no time to convert. They would have to cease operation of their current, in other words, if their current operation was not already in compliance with the ordinance, then they would have to cease operations immediately.
So,
except for the 186 who would be given 90 days.
Councilmembers, what we can do, if you don't mind my suggestion is, if we can hear them out, let them finish the presentation, because this is going to be a policy discussion. I think we need to hear them go through their process. Let's hear what they have to say, and then we can have this discussion so we can get to those questions. Otherwise, we're going to be in this place.
But a point of clarification.
Okay.
Regarding what you're discussing, the collectives, does the collective include those locations that dispense for a fee, or is a collective just a location where individuals who are using medical marijuana can exchange that particular product? Does it also include those that sell medical marijuana and other items, or are those totally excluded from your comments?
What's contemplated here is a model whereby those who are qualified to do so, the qualified patients and their primary caregivers come together and cultivate medical marijuana for the use of the qualified patient. No selling. This is not a sales model.
Okay, is the sales model included? That's my point of clarification. The sales model where a person has a prescription, they go to a location where they purchase the medical marijuana, they go home, they ingest. Are those locations included in this particular model?
No, they are not. They would not be in compliance.
Where do those exist then, or are they all pushed away?
Our interpretation of state law, as we have always maintained, is that selling medical marijuana is not authorized under state law.
So,
collective cultivation is, and those who are eligible to do so under state law may cultivate, and among those members who need it will certainly have the opportunity to obtain it and have access to it in that manner.
So it's similar to a co-op. It's similar to a co-op where those individuals that are a part of that co-op can gather, can exchange without dollar exchange, without any currency exchange. What do we do with those locations where a person can go and purchase? They don't have any, they don't cultivate. Is that included where they can make a purchase with the prescription?
No, it is not included.
So what do we do with those places?
That's right. They're not support.
Thank you. So the question is, under the 186 or 187, whichever number it is, many of those locations dispense with a prescription for a fee, for a dollar value. What happens with those locations?
Those locations would not be in compliance with this ordinance. They're engaging in sales, which is not supported or authorized under state law,
So
which provides an affirmative defense for very specific conduct, cultivation and possession. And the affirmative defense is expanded only in a limited fashion for certain additional conduct ancillary to the provision of medical marijuana, but that expansion of the affirmative defenses does not include sales, and we do not find any support for it in state law.
So the city position would be that only cultivation, exchange with caregivers and persons with prescriptions would be eligible, and all the others, whether they have a hardship or not, would all be illegal and all be put out of business. So if there's currency exchange, they would not include, even though they're under the 80, 186, 187, and any others that started after with a hardship or any other condition would be illegal and put out of business, and only collectives would be permitted in the city of Los Angeles.
In accordance with state law, that is our,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
Right, no, thank you. And that's been one of the core discussions as to legal interpretation versus policy development and how that's being interpreted through different legal perspectives. And that's where we have to gain some traction to move this forward, is how will this committee recommend to the full council these interpretations. So thank you. Does that conclude?
That concludes my presentation.
Okay.
Unless any of you have any questions, we do have several speakers, and I would like to ask that we call them forward if possible.
Okay, I have a card here, so we'll take care of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now,
Can I have one?
entertain any
Have
additional
one
questions?
One question.
One second question. On the signage, I see it says here on your summary, signage restriction removed. So there were some signage restrictions before. Was that a legal reason or a policy reason why the signage restriction was removed?
It was essentially something along the lines of a public safety issue with respect to not wanting to have obvious signs. However, we feel that it's more appropriate that the city's sign ordinance provisions control here, and so we removed specific signage provision from this
So
ordinance.
there's no legal reason why you removed it?
Well, legally speaking, we think it would be preferable to have the city's sign ordinance be controlling with respect to the appropriate signage for the collective cultivation locations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next I'd like to call up one of the high-ranking commanders of the Los Angeles Police Department. Come on up, Officer Beck. Just give us your title, Deputy Chief, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I'm Charlie Beck. I'm the Chief of Detectives for the Los Angeles Police Department.
Now, when we look at the issue of implementation, I think everyone that is representing the districts understands the strain we're under, given the violence that has occurred in our city, the level of facilities that have emerged, more sensitive areas. In some blocks, we have 3 or 4 in one block. In my district, I'm aware of certain roads, certain facilities have been held up, there have been shots fired. We know this is occurring in our city. On the other hand, we have a rural population that is truly suffering. We have a population who suffers from cancer, who suffers from AIDS, and a whole range of ailments in which medical marijuana truly is a medicine. But it's a huge city. We just did an incredible act of cracking down on a major gang, which many of them many of these gangs are subsidized by the gang-related drug trade. There's a sub-economy in the millions and millions of dollars. And we're caught right in the middle of this vortex of issues. So this is not an easy one for anyone, but hearing the discussion and hearing our concerns and what the city attorney is proposing, I would just love to get your reaction and what you see and what's in front of you, given that you are the key point in maintaining peace in the city.
First, Councilman, I agree with everything that you said, and I think it is important that people understand that the Los Angeles Police Department, Chief Bratton, myself, do not disagree with the state's medical marijuana laws. We believe that when appropriately distributed, that medical marijuana is legitimate, and that the city of Los Angeles should have some way that it can exist to do what you said, to support people that have a medical demonstrated need. You talked about crime, you talked about quality of life, and it is true that some medical marijuana dispensaries, storefronts, whichever term you want to use, some of the existing structures have a high volume of crime. However, some do not. And that is, I think, something that's key for this body to think about while doing this. I believe that through proper ordinance, you can reduce the incidence of crime at these locations. I don't think, and this comes from my 33 years of experience doing this, I don't think that medical marijuana sites per se, just on their face, are going to be magnets for crime. It is the way that it's administered. The second part is not going to be as popular. The second part is the attractant for crime is the large amounts of cash, and that has been the origin of crime and for decades, and that is the origin of crime in this case. And I think that this body has to recognize that if you do, and I've read, I like the council members got this ordinance today. I've read it. On its face, looks good. I think that obviously the council's hit on some key issues about the disparity in the initial administration of the ordinance and things like that I would certainly leave to this body. But I think the key point is this, is that the city attorney and our district attorney, and I think you have a rep from the district attorney here that will speak to you, which I really believe you should listen to, because I think that both those prosecutorial bodies are going to tell you that they believe that the exchange of marijuana for money over a storefront is a felony. So I think that those two things should guide this body, in my opinion, is that there is a way to do this. There is a way to make these places exist, serve the need that is demonstrated and that we believe exists, without making them attractants for crime. However, there needs to be a change in the way that that's done, because we have had a number of very egregious incidents. There's been 37 either burglaries or robberies of medical marijuana establishments in the last year, primarily by use of extreme force. Not like bank robberies where there's notes passed and such, but medical marijuana robberies tend to be very violent because there are usually some barriers that inhibit access. So street gangs have coalesced to make this one of their targets because it's so rich. And I think that's the issue that this body should look at. And if you do those things, then I think that you can come to an agreement that gives people that have medical necessity avenues for an outlet there, but also keep your neighborhood safe, which I know all three of you are very desirous of.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from my colleagues for Chief Beck?
Chief, just briefly, the DEA was doing a lot of raids throughout the Southern California area.
Yes.
I know that the Sheriff's Department did some recently in the county area. Since the new administration, the federal level was taken over, and the Attorney General has given basically a different direction. Is DEA backing off from their local raids locally?
We have done a couple of search warrants and arrest warrants at medical marijuana storefronts in conjunction with the DEA, but under very strict guidelines. The only way that I allow these operations to continue in the city now is if we have an embedded district attorney that comes online in the investigation early on and helps direct the narcotics detectives in that investigation, so that we can make sure that we meet not only a federal requirement, which is what, of course, the DEA looks to, but also our local state requirements, which is what I mandated. I mean, obviously I do federal too, but my mandate, through you, is to enforce state and local ordinance. So that is the only way we do it, and we've only done a couple. They're intensive investigations because we certainly want to do this right, and especially in absence of an ordinance that gives us real clear direction, I have to err heavily on the side of caution when doing one of these investigations. So that's what we've been doing. I think the time is coming, though, where the district attorney, and I'll let them. I won't speculate on what the district attorney wants. I'll let them speak for themselves.
Another question regarding the comments from the city attorney, Heather Aubrey, regarding the ordinance that the collective, when we define a collective, it's the exchange of medical marijuana amongst caregivers and patients with prescriptions, period, no money exchange.
Yes, I think that the ordinance, if the way I read it is correct, there is some money involved, but not at the over-the-counter level. There is bookkeeping that must be done because obviously this stuff costs money. You got electricity, you got water, you got product, you got everything. So there is money, but it's done at an organizational level instead of an over-the-counter level. And we have the ability to audit those books to make sure that that's what it really is. So it's not a for-profit.
Which is basically a co-op, and in a co-op that would be the operation.
I agree with that.
So is the department, I understand the Chief Bratton has supported medical marijuana for legitimate patients.
Right.
That pushed aside when it comes to the issue of the 186, 187 prior to the moratorium until where we are now, hundreds of facilities, some with hardship, some without a hardship, where there's an exchange of cash. You go in, here's $50, I want 6 seeds, I want 3, whatever the case may be. That issue, is the department supporting that, or is the department supporting what the city attorney has recommended, just the collective, where there is no money exchanged, and there's just the product passed from either caregiver or patient, and not sales over the counter?
We support the collective model.
The collective model is supported by the city attorney's office.
As and obviously the details are for this body to work out, but the basic concept that you give to me, where it's a collective model where people collaborate through caregivers to supply to licensed patients, we're fine with that. I think that's the intent of the state law. I'm obviously not an attorney, but I do apply the law, and I think that's the intent of the state law. And any city ordinance that would support that, I think, would be well served by the council.
But not a condition where you would go in and purchase for a fee.
First, I think that the state law precludes that, and I think that that's a major issue. And then the second kind of ancillary issue is I think that is the root of the issues that we've had with violent crime in and around these storefronts, is that there is an exchange of money. There is a large flow of cash. There is a kind of a reluctance just based on the kind of underground economy model that many of these folks came from to report. So you get a reluctance to report, ready cash. I just give you a crime prediction based on those two things.
Thank you, Chief.
Just one last question, Chief. And this is the detail of the ordinance, but I just want to understand it, and maybe you can tell me later, or they have the answer now, but there's a cap of 100 plants.
100 plants.
In the ordinance. Where did that come from?
It came from us and the Los Angeles Police Department, although obviously the city attorney looked at some other things. We looked at the other municipal ordinances within the state. Most of them are either at or below 100 plants. I consulted with my veteran narcotics detectives on what 100 plants would mean and how many people that could serve. We think it's a reasonable number for a collaborative. But then again, there's also a couple of other issues. Any more than 100 plants it causes a couple of concerns. First of all, they are probably, especially in a inside interior grow house, probably would exceed what normal capabilities of electricity would be for a residence and that kind of thing. So that's an issue. There are also the issues of how much space is going to be taken up by this and how much value the crop is going to have and how much of an attractant that's going to be. So there's a number of things that went into that calculation, and I can give you some bullet points on that if the committee's interested in that.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for your time and your great work and the whole department for their accomplishments today in protecting our city. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker I'd like to call up on the line is, I thank you for the patience, Long Beach City Attorney Robert Shane. I'll also fill out a card, and I thank you again, so I know you've been here a long time, so thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and council members, for taking me out of order. I have a city council I have to advise a little bit later in the day. I am the elected city attorney of Long Beach, have been for 12 years. I am the civil legal advisor to the city of Long Beach. The city of Long Beach is a little bit different from Los Angeles in that it has a separate prosecutor. I believe Mr. Reeves will be speaking later. And just as an aside, even though I am down in Long Beach, I do have a soft spot in my heart for Los Angeles. My dad was a Los Angeles police officer for 32 years, and so this is a very, very special place to me. The city of Long Beach has been grappling with this issue for a number of years, just as you have, and has treated it as many other entities in that it has ignored the issue for a long time, and we're finally coming down to the point where we're grappling with the issue. We just had a committee meeting yesterday, and some very vigorous discussion was held. I want to make a very, very simple legal point. Before I do, I just want to say that I would never presume to come before you and try to opine on policy. It's not my place, and of course, you wouldn't listen to me anyway. What I want to do is to make a very, very simple, brief legal point. And that is simply this. Medical marijuana dispensaries. If you define a dispensary as any business dispensing for sale medical marijuana over the counter, is illegal under state law. And therefore, no local municipal entity can legally regulate or permit them, because to legally regulate or permit them implies that they have a right to exist. In other words, to do business against the law. You can't do that. And the city of Long Beach will not do that, and I would suggest that it would be inappropriate, legally inappropriate, not from a policy standpoint, but legally inappropriate for you to attempt to regulate, that is to validate their existence. That's my simple point. Thank you very much.
I've got a question, Mr. Chair.
Please.
I understand Oakland and West Hollywood, I don't know how many other cities in California have ordinances. Do they regulate with just the dispensary, or do they regulate with the currency exchange?
Oakland, I can't speak to West Hollywood, and I assume that they probably are patterned after Oakland. Oakland does purport to regulate dispensaries. They're wrong.
So they're regulating with the cash exchange?
That's correct.
Breaking the law?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. What's your family name?
Shannon.
Okay, thank you.
There were three Shannons on the LA.
Was it J.J. Shannon?
J.J.
A lieutenant?
J.J. was my dad.
I worked for him many years ago. He was a hard guy to work for. Obviously raised a good son.
He was a hell of a good father.
He was a professional. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mr. City Attorney? So to make it clear, the City of Long Beach has taken the position that it is illegal to
That's correct.
exchange, and so there are no dispensaries.
Let me qualify that. Yeah. The city attorney's office will take the position that it's illegal. We're not quite as far along as you are in terms of public hearings, and in fact, the city attorney has not rendered a formal report, but you're getting a preview of coming attractions for the city of Long Beach.
And do they have any dispensaries in the City of Long Beach?
We have many dispensaries.
Oh, you do?
We have more than a dozen, believe me. We have more than 20. We have a lot of dispensaries. How's that?
So you do have dispensaries, but you just haven't regulated them.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So they're all running as they wish to run with no regulation?
That's correct.
Could be next to a church, a school, a liquor store.
There are no regulations at all, I'm sorry to say.
That's the problem we had, and that's why we did the moratorium, right. And now you see what we've got.
We enacted a moratorium. That moratorium expired 3 years ago, and
okay.
Your experience is very similar to ours.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your time and your participation. We have also, we might as well group the cities together. Tom Reeves from Long Beach City Prosecutor. Mr. Reeves. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And then will be followed by the Deputy District Attorney's Office. And either John Herndon or Joseph Esposito, you guys decide who goes first. But thank you, Mr. Reeves, for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. And someone left their glasses up here. Oh, who's this? That's the person that can't read the agenda. I just want to echo the sentiments of Mr. Shannon, and to tell you, though, that from a prosecutor's point of view, you're going to hear from the district attorney's office on this. I'm going to be dealing with whatever regulations my city comes up with, as you're considering now. So I wanted to talk about some of the side effects, some of the collateral effects of having medical marijuana dispensaries and other kinds of activities that are related to that. Just think of traffic. You've got every business in Long Beach that intends to open up has to go through our planning department and come up with a traffic plan. Where are they going to park? How long are they going to be there? How many people are you going to see? You have to provide parking for them. That's not happening in our city. We also have loitering about. We had complaints last night at the committee meeting that I attended and testified at about people loitering and doing other activities, maybe smoking, maybe just dropping the litter from the edibles, as they call these other products, dropping, littering, those kinds of things happen at these storefronts. And those are the complaints that we hear from those who live next door. In addition to that, and much more important than that, we heard last night from a gentleman who said there are 2 dispensaries, one on either side of his home. The one on the right side of his home was the subject of an armed robbery, a strong armed robbery. While his nephews and nieces were playing in the front yard, 5 men with hoods and guns took down that dispensary next door to him. He pleaded with our city council, and I will just reiterate his plea. Don't put them in residential areas. They don't belong there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, I'd like to call up, gentlemen, you can decide who goes first, John Harlan and Joseph Esposito.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Joseph Esposito. I'm here on behalf of District Attorney Steve Cooley. I'm the head deputy of the District Attorney's Major Narcotics Division. The District Attorney's Office understands that there are qualified patients that need access to marijuana for medicinal purposes, but it's the District Attorney's position that such access should be measured very carefully with conduct that is permissible under California law. The District Attorney's Office has been evaluating the Compassionate Use Act and the medical marijuana program for the better part of 2 years, and we have come to the conclusion, it is our position, that over-the-counter sales of marijuana in exchange for money and the profitability, the tremendous profitability that's attached to that over-the-counter sales are illegal under California law. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No, I don't. Do you have any questions?
Have you, has your office worked with the DEA in some of the raids that have been occurring recently?
I'm sorry?
Has the District Attorney's Office worked with the DEA on some of the raids that have occurred recently in Los Angeles?
Very recently, yes. Most of the DEA raids from 2008 were filed federally.
Okay. And the rationale is that, because DEA has rationalized the raids as, marijuana use is illegal under federal law, and they have not given any credence to the state law, and the DEA's participation in that. Your rationale has been the same as the DEA?
We have not participated with DEA on a federal raid for a violation of federal law. As county prosecutors, we don't have the authority to file charges for a violation of federal law. That would have to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We have participated with DEA only on dispensaries that are in violation of state law.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I do have a question for you, and again, this is for when I understand that the role that you have with your body is an advisory one within your legal perspective. And in this very turbulent discussion, we find that there are other cities and other counties in California who are not following your logic and or your statement or position. The city of Oakland, the city of Humboldt, they have dispensaries where cash is allowed. How do you react to that dynamic, given their legal position as they interpret state law?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to note that the way the Health and Safety Code is written, is not precise when it comes to the CUA or the MNP. It is 9 pages of very tiny text within our health and safety code. It's one of the longest written laws that exists. A lot of the cities allowed several years ago different types of operations, but since that period of time, our California Supreme Court and our California Court of Appeal have responded fairly recently with guidance as to how to interpret California law. And it is our position that cities that allow over-the-counter sales are not considering the recent Supreme Court decision in Mensch, nor other Court of Appeal decisions, and therefore they are operating outside of California law. There is no mechanism within the Health and Safety Code, within the CUA or the MNP, that authorizes, that makes permissible, that allows, that considers over-the-counter sales for money. There's no mention of it in there. What it allows is very specific conduct. Qualified patients and their primary caregivers can cultivate and can use. That is it. There is no additional language that says you can sell over the counter. And I would like to echo the words of Chief Beck, because I think his point is very important, that it is in fact the over-the-counter sales, those dispensaries or those collectives or whatever you want to call them, that operate not as a collective, not designed to allow those qualified patients access to marijuana, but in fact solely selling over the counter. Those are the ones that are doing it to generate the profit, tremendous profits. I can't give you an exact number of the different dispensaries that I've participated in the investigation end of it with law enforcement, but I will tell you in none of them have we been presented with any type of evidence to suggest that they were nonprofits. Not one. And it is that conduct, in addition to the over-the-counter sales, which drives the over-counter sales. It's this tremendous profitability, and that's what brings crime to these locations.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for your insight and your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next guest from the County District Attorney's Office. Okay, we have John Harlan, Deputy District Attorney. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I really don't have much to add because I think that my supervisor as well as Chief Beck have already said it. Essentially, there is a problem with any model that allows for over-the-counter sales. There are multiple problems under the law with that particular model. First of all, sales are not immunized. Second of all, distribution without cultivation is not immunized conduct. What you have going on at many of these dispensaries, it's not that the collective and cooperative is illegal per se. The problem is with how they're being run. So what happens is if you have an outside supplier, that could be a criminal street gang, that could be somebody who's got a grow house that they've set up. They come in, they sell their marijuana to the dispensary, and then the dispensary just resells it over the counter. That is not immunized conduct under the law. And then, as Mr. Esposito said, the profit that's involved in these things, I mean, we're talking about $20 to $60 a gram that these places are selling the marijuana for. I don't know any particular type of agricultural product that costs $20 to $60 per gram to produce. That's over $9,000 a pound. So
Please, let's give the gentleman the courtesy that you would like, please.
So the problem is not with the access, the problem is not with group cultivation, which is really what the law immunizes, group cultivation projects. The problem is with the specific conduct of these collective, cooperative, caregiver, club, whatever they would like to characterize themselves as. They are clearly engaging in illegal conduct that is not immunized.
Okay.
Eddie?
Sir, please.
A couple questions regarding Oakland. How does Oakland get away with selling and committing violations of the state law?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, let me be clear. It's illegal conduct, and it should be prosecuted. Whether they decide to exercise prosecutorial discretion and not prosecute, I don't know why they're making that particular decision, but I can tell you right now, under California law, it's illegal conduct, and it is subject to prosecution.
And the other issue, two other questions, the court decisions, the California Supreme Court and their decisions, and U.S. Supreme Court, have there been any U.S. Supreme Court decisions in this matter?
Well, the issue that there was a huge landmark decision by the California Supreme Court in December, People versus Mensch. And People versus Mensch discussed who a primary caregiver is, because essentially, if dispensaries qualified as a primary caregiver, they would be giving much more latitude in terms of what type of conduct they can engage in. I basically can use the analogy. Primary caregivers in medical marijuana law are like the queen piece on the chessboard. They have much latitude and can do a lot of things that other pieces on the board cannot do. When the California Supreme Court defined primary caregivers specifically, they gave examples: spouse, domestic partner, adult child caring for an elderly sick parent, hospice nurse, in-home health aide, people like that. They specifically indicated that someone who just supplies marijuana, such as a dispensary, is not a primary caregiver. So that particular California Supreme Court case is a pivotal case in the area of California law, because these dispensaries, before you saw caregiver in a lot of their names because they wanted to try to claim to be primary caregivers. They're not. So that would be the case.
So the Mensch case, the most recent, because I've heard that case cited a number of times, clearly describes what a caregiver is.
Correct.
The next and final question I have is the purity of the product. We know we go to a restaurant in LA County, there's ratings from A to closing. Is there any grading system or purity system when it comes to any of the product that people are purchasing? Any contamination? Is there any cases or any state regulations to say this purity level is such and such versus contamination, or is it just you get what you get? Has that been approached at all?
I guess I would just say essentially the short answer is no, there is no regulation. Essentially, a marijuana with the 3% THC content is treated the same as marijuana with 30% THC content. There's no regulation in that particular area. And essentially, from a criminal law perspective, it doesn't really matter. Marijuana with a 3% THC content is the same as one with 30% THC content. It's illegal to sell that, and so that's a felony.
No, I understand that, but as far as the medical aspect, I know when you take a certain prescription medication, so many milligrams of this, so many milligrams of that, it's rated at a certain level. The doctor prescribes, 40 milligrams, okay, or 60 milligrams. When it comes to the medical aspect of marijuana, the THC component, there's no grading system, whether it be 3% or 30%. In other words, this is the product as it is.
That's correct, and I would respectfully refer the body here to a recent decision, Behrman versus the California Medical Board, where essentially when it comes to the recommendation and what illnesses the recommendation is given for, the amounts, there is no regulation of that, and that's a major public policy problem. That's not something that we address from the district attorney's office, but it is a problem with the law the way it's written. It's allowing for essentially there are people who are seriously ill that this law is designed to protect, and it should protect. And then there are people that are essentially lying to their doctors and engaging in recreational use or abusing it and getting away with it.
Well, and I've got one final. There was a Nightline. ABC did a story on medical marijuana. I don't know if you saw that or not. But a reporter with a camera crew went in and spoke to the doctor. He's basically given up his practice to write prescriptions for medical marijuana. And his statement was very clear. If you want it, somehow you can go to a doctor and they'll give that prescription. Have you folks done any investigation into that, the medical doctors who are legitimate MDs simply giving up their practice and writing prescriptions for medical marijuana?
Well,
for cash.
My role in this area is limited to looking at dispensaries.
Okay.
Should that be done? For them actually giving the recommendation, they have immunity for that. And I think that obviously we have to respect that doctors have a right to practice a particular way. However, when they do violate the standard of care within their particular practice, then I think that the medical board should be coming knocking. Yeah. And if it goes to the extent where it's criminal, then certainly prosecutors need to be looking at that as well.
Mr. Zen, but That's a good question, because when we've asked that question before, we've been told that it's up to the state board to go after those doctors who are prescribing medical marijuana when they should not be to particular patients. Now, do you, within your realm, have the jurisdiction to go after doctors?
Well, it just, the
For
short
that
answer is
conduct,
yes.
for that conduct?
The short answer is yes. The question is the severity of the violation. It would not be for actually giving the recommendation. It is lawful for a doctor to recommend marijuana as under state law for medicinal use. The question is if the doctor, essentially, if you have a mill doctor and the person walks in, says, I don't have anything wrong with me, and the doctor says, you must have something wrong, and their physical examination is touching their shoulder, and then they walk out, and they have their recommendation, I'm assuming that the medical board is going to have a problem with that standard of care. Whether that rises to the level of criminal conduct, certainly there's a jurisdiction to consider that, but at this point, I'm not aware, because that's not my area of expertise. I couldn't comment further.
That's I think one of the pivotal points that we need to explore more as to what is available to us in trying to implement an ordinance that's going to work. So,
well, and I certainly wish you all the best in implementing an ordinance, because certainly there is a sentiment that we do need to protect individuals who are seriously ill and do need access, and it does give them relief. That certainly, though, needs to be balanced with what the law says, and clearly the way these dispensaries are being operated, unfortunately, and very unfortunately for the patients who need it, they're being operated in an illegal way.
thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your time and your insight. We did call our own city attorney, Bill Carter, but my understanding is that Asher Greenberg will be speaking in his place. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. I'm here to talk to you about another public safety and health aspect of this issue, which hasn't been covered so far, and it is sort of responsive to a question you asked, Councilman Zine. We sent some samples of marijuana that were obtained through controlled buys by LAPD from some of the marijuana dispensaries to a laboratory for analysis. Two of the samples were found to have unacceptably high levels of pesticide on them. One of the samples had nearly 170 times the permitted amount of the pesticide, and the other one had nearly 5 times the amount that was permitted. So that's just something that I thought we should bring to your attention as something that you should factor into your decision today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, my colleagues?
Do you know of any standard that this whole issue of medical marijuana, where there's been any standard as to the purity of the THC or contamination, or, I mean, you go and get a soda pop out of a machine, there's some assurance that the FDA has inspected. You buy meat at the market, there's some assurance, and while problems may occur now and then, or you go to a restaurant and then you get sick from contamination, which is the rare situation. Has there ever been anything to check on the purity to see exactly how pure it is versus contamination? Like water in some parts of this world is contaminated. You're told not to drink, not to brush your teeth with using the water. Has there been anything in that arena for the patient who needs it, so there's some assurance that what they're getting is a product that's not going to cause them more illness or injury?
Well, neither the COA nor the MMP contain those kinds of standards. And one of the problems is that because marijuana is illegal under federal law, the FDA doesn't really even have it listed in the products that it controls. So that is a problem. However, I think if you did have a collective model, then I think you would at least have some internal controls in the sense that the marijuana that was being consumed would have been grown by the collective, and also, you know, they wouldn't be getting it from outside. And you would also, if each member was registered, then the marijuana would be distributed to only certain members. You would know if there was any contamination, you know, who had consumed it. So I think that's just another way of looking at, or another reason why I think this model is preferable.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you again for your hard work. We've covered 3D and C, and what we'd like to do is go to 3D, which would be the planning update. So you can give us the Reader's Digest version of your report. And I want to commend the planning staff for their hard work. They have been looking at the geography and the land use impact of these issues, and they've literally gone through using technology, have been able to drill down to specific information as to where we avoid conflict with sensitive uses in the general areas, and it'll be just, if I recall correctly, we'll be just using one location as an example, but I believe they're about 80% done in reference to how would the city look when we talk about accessibility and what the locations would be. So good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, City Council. I'm Helen Bibas with the Planning Department. As I reported about at the last meeting, that we are continuing with the land use analysis of both the existing dispensaries and the potential locations for new dispensaries in order to determine the appropriate standard that will maximize the access to those facilities to qualified patients while protecting sensitive uses such as schools and parks and libraries and such. I just brought you a sample of what of our approach and how we are going about doing this analysis. We are looking mostly at, we broke down the city into 35 planning area, and we plotted all the child care and youth facilities, all the libraries, the parks, the religious facilities and the schools. We also plotted the adult entertainment establishments, bars, nightclubs, all the off-site and on-site liquor licenses that have been issued by the city, as well as all the pre-ICO 186 dispensaries. We created buffers of 1,000 feet around all these sensitive uses, and that's basically the first page of the package that you have with you. And then we looked at those layers in a more detailed fashion, and we are attempting to come up with an acreage, or at least a number of parcels where we think, where we would, with those screens, where those dispensaries could potentially be located under those parameters. We have also the ability to remove a layer, add a layer, so that we can, again, look at the number of parcels that could be used to house a dispensary. That's pretty much where we are at. We are doing this for the 35 community plan area, and we are progressing at
How much of the city do you have left? How much of the city do you have left to map out?
We have done 10 plans so far, about a third.
About a third?
Correct.
So you have about a third left.
Right. We are doing the more detailed analysis on only 2 to date.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any questions, my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, and the last item in terms of those on the agenda 3 is the motion from Councilman Zion and other. So that particular motion was a directive that wanted the city attorney to work with the council. I believe we're achieving that goal, but we will act on that motion at the end. But that was the essence of that discussion, and to review those 4 cases that were essentially identified, and I believe we're making traction there. So unless you have any other questions, Councilmember, on that motion. Okay, that being the case, then let's dig into the public comment phase of the committee. And as you can see, it's a pretty healthy stack. We'll go 1 minute per speaker, and we'll proceed. We have with us, and I want to thank you for your patience again, Charles L. Linden, Patrick Duff, Ali Razi, Bob Lang, come on up, Leonard Schaefer. You can get started up the line. So Charles Linden, Patrick Duff, Ali Razi, Bob Lang, come on up.
My name is, Mr. Chairman, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
My name is Charles Lindner. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I've been a prosecutor and defense attorney in Los Angeles County for 35 years. Let me set you straight. Most of what you heard from government attorneys today is wrong. Okay? As late as August 1st, in the case of County of Butte versus Butte County Superior Court, the Court of Appeal ruled that people who are clinic members or who are, collective members may be able to pay in cash for their marijuana as their contribution to their collective. Now, since I only get a minute to respond to 2.5 hours of the city talking to itself.
We'll have the county as well.
I'm sorry? I would like to invite your attention. Oh, I've used my minute?
Yes, well.
Fine, we'll have a session.
Your statement, and you could submit it for the record, and we'll review it.
Fine, let me tell you this. Your enforcement mechanism where LAPD gets to go into medical marijuana clinics without a warrant and without any reason other than they wish to inspect violates Article 1, Section 1 of the state constitution, the right of privacy.
I understand.
Want to regulate this, you have to do it constitutionally.
Thank you very much. But we also have an obligation to our neighborhoods, to our communities, and their rights as well. So
your oath was to obey the Constitution.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Patrick Duff. Good afternoon. Just keep an eye on the clock, please, so you can make your point.
Good afternoon. My point, basically, number one, the city attorney and the different people, district attorneys, are saying that sales of cannabis are illegal. But the guidelines say that you got to pay taxes. So if you can't sell it, how do you pay taxes on it? Number one. Number two, as to his thought that no dispensaries are not for profit, he hasn't seen a lot of them, because I know a lot that actually lose money every year. As to the Long Beach moratorium, I like the guy from Long Beach admitting his moratorium was up 3 years ago and they couldn't do anything about it. Government Rule Code Section 65858 states that the interim ordinance shall be no further force of effect from 45 days of adoption after notice pursuant to Section 65090 and public hearing. The legislative body may extend the interim ordinance 10 months or 15 days, and subsequently interim ordinance may be extended for 1 year. Any extension shall also require 4/5 vote. Not more than 2 extensions may be adopted. So you're breaking the law.
Good afternoon, sir.
Greetings in the name of the Most High God, Jah Rastafari Selassie. Ganja is my life, is my sacrament to my God. I haven't heard anyone speak about spirituality with marijuana, and where we as Rastas suffer in prison and jail all over the world, because only one thing we do, smoke marijuana, giving God thanks and praise. Now, I heard district attorney always saying a lot of people in prison that make their children suffer and mothers and babies suffer. They don't know this. But they got to know this now. Marijuana is a sacrament to my God. And my God don't sleep. My blessing is all of you. And all of you will have children tomorrow. And we have to make a better world for our children tomorrow, children tomorrow, children tomorrow. You all here got to make a better day for all of us. God bless all of you. Think correct and do the right thing.
Thank you, sir. So we have Bob Lang, Leonard Schaefer, and then Brett Rubin, and then Catherine Shaw.
Hi, thanks for the moment to speak. I think that there's a lot of prosecutorial forces that are trying to prevent cannabis dispensaries from existing in this city. I think you should look for other big cities like Oakland and San Francisco that have grappled with this and come up with models that work. And I think that most of the complaints that you will find are due to lack of regulation, and the chief of detectives was correct. Most well-regulated operations are not community blight, and I feel demonized as a patient to be associated with criminal activities because I need medicine. I think that there's a balancing point here, and that you guys are going to work really hard to have to find it. I wish you luck. That's all I want to say. Have a good day.
Thank you. Brian Brown, Leonard Schaefer, Brett Rubin, Kathy Shaw, and then Richard Kearns. Come on up. Give us your name and address.
Good afternoon, Brett Rubin. I'm an attorney. I represent several dispensaries. And let me just say, from a public policy standpoint, the surest way to drive the marijuana trade into residential neighborhoods and underground is to disallow over-the-counter sales. I represent a number of these places, and I know what the costs are just to open them. I represent a number of these dispensaries, and in terms of the cost to open, I know that they all end up spending in excess of $100,000, and these new regulations impose additional security costs on the dispensaries. And whatever the cost of a gram of marijuana is, I can tell you that none of these dispensaries are making huge profits, that their cash flow it compares unfavorably to your local 7-Eleven in terms of how much cash they have on hand and drawing any crime there. So the idea that they can't sell over the counter, you're never going to get a group of people that will put together the amount of money that it takes to open up one of these places with the security restrictions imposed by the new ordinances. Okay. I also just wanted to point out that these new ordinances potentially disallow any employees who are not already qualified.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Barbara, can I see the clock? Can I do it so that the speaker can see it as well as the council? Appreciate that. Oops. No, we did it. Meeting's over. No, just kidding. All right. Does anybody have a 1 minute clock here? All right. Please give us your name.
Hi, my name is Catherine Shore. I appreciate you guys listening. I'm a homeowner, a small business owner, a qualified patient, and the mother of an adorable 6-year-old boy who lives within 100 yards or 1,000 yards of a collective. I feel that the liquor store and the strip club that shares a wall with the charter school on my street, as well as the 7-Eleven that serves alcohol and people load up, is far more dangerous to my quality of life. And the patients that I know that go to the collective and exchange money for their medicine are doing so because they're unable to collective grow marijuana in their own home or in their own neighborhood, and that it serves an incredible service to them to compensate the collective for their medicine as, let's say, a Rite Aid or a CVS is compensated for their drugs, their alcohol that they sell next to my children's school supplies, as well as toys. And I feel that generally is a much more detrimental to us than the collective on the corner.
Thank you. So, I'll call it the names one more time. Bob Ryan, Leonard Schaefer, Richard Kearns, over here. And then I believe it's, I can't read the name too well, it's 6467 Lexington Avenue. I believe that's C-O-N-T-E, Conti, maybe? Come on up. Give us your name.
My name is Richard Kearns.
Okay.
Okay. I'm an AIDS patient. Nobody requires me to grow and manufacture my own AIDS medicine, and medical cannabis is a very important part of my AIDS regimen. Martin Luther King, in Letter to a Birmingham Jail, said, "Justice delayed is justice denied." And I'm shocked that this is a tactic that's being used to keep me from medicine that's keeping me alive and keeping my life livable. Please remember the patients in this. This is for us. This is not hard to figure out, okay? We can use an intermediary exchange system. I buy points, the points get applied to the medicine that I get. It's not hard, but if somebody's butt were on the line in the city attorney's office and needed this medicine, I think it'd be solved really fast. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Somebody left up here?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Dejay Kuti, District 4, Patient Advocacy Network. You'll get it right, it's okay, Mr. Reyes. First, I'd like to congratulate the City of San Francisco. They have successfully gone through their permitting process, and every dispensary operating in that city is permitted. And what they've gone through now is they realize that they've got to go the next step, which is now to regulate the cultivating, to close the circle that we're talking about. And what you're doing is you're trying to compare apples and oranges and do it all within one ordinance. We need a dispensary ordinance. The Attorney General guidelines allows for a storefront dispensary as long as it's a closed system. And if everyone within that dispensary is a member and is a legally qualified patient, then that over-the-counter exchange is legal. If not, I think the state would have gone after Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco a long time ago. Thank you.
Please, folks, we have, I think it's John or Sullivan with the Miracle Residential Association, then we have Michael Bax, then Paul Werner, and then Robert Kahn. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, council members. James O'Sullivan, Miracle Mile Residential Association. I just got the ordinance, so I want to read it before I make a lot of comments. But I'm going to run home and try to read County of Butte because I'm very familiar with Mensch. This won't be easy. Nobody thinks it's going to be easy. You could have competing lawsuits by the time it's all over with. But I think your task will be easy. You know, as council members, you take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the state of California. And I think if you err on the side of what the state of California, what legally says you can do, you'll be fine. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Michael Bax. Michael Bax, are you here? Cornerstone Research. Then Paul Werner, and then Robert Kahn. Good
afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Michael Backus. I live in Eagle Rock, California. I operate Cornerstone Research. Today was really fascinating for me. We got to see a lot of what our the legal community is bringing to the table here as far as opinions vis-a-vis whether or not we can proceed with any kind of reasonable regulation. A couple things really struck me, though. The main one was about controlled buys by the city attorney's office and testing. I own a testing lab. I know how it works. I've followed it for quite some time. I guarantee you that there is no amount of marijuana that could be purchased in a dispensary in Southern California that would be sufficient enough to get an accurate pesticide value. It simply is a fantasy, which leads me to think that we're being presented with some information today that really hasn't been vetted for its accuracy. I think that this is a public health issue, it's a science issue, and we need to focus on it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Do you think if we do regulate and control the quality and TCH levels, et cetera, would that be in the realm of something, in your opinion, that the city should do as it sets its ordinance, or do you think that shouldn't be part of the ordinance?
You could go either way. I mean, the thing about it is that there's an enormous amount of demand on the part of patients and their doctors to understand what they're getting. Yeah. And you're already seeing several labs set up around the state to address this issue, and they've got validated scientific methods to test the cannabis. In our initial testing, we're not seeing pesticides being nearly as big a problem as pathogenic molds. The good news is pathogenic molds are extremely easy to clean up and get out of the supply chain.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul Werner, Robert Kahn, Ben Lutz, and Michael Larson.
Thank you. I'm Paul Lerner with Melrose Action Neighborhood Watch. I'm also on the board of Mid-City West Community Council. Our neighborhood has been inundated with marijuana storefronts, and the neighbors are very concerned about that. Just so far this year, there have been 3 armed robberies at marijuana storefronts. just within our neighborhood. In an adjoining neighborhood last year, there was a murder at a marijuana dispensary where a security guard was killed. We also see people loitering outside of dispensaries. We see people coming out of dispensaries openly smoking marijuana, walking down the street smoking marijuana. We see people coming out of dispensaries smoking marijuana and then getting in their cars and driving through our neighborhoods under the influence, driving recklessly. Suffice it to say that we're very worried about the public safety hazards represented by the marijuana storefronts. We support medical marijuana for patients who need it through qualified collectives, qualified patients, but we know that there are delivery services that provide these, and that's a better way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Kahn. After Robert Kahn is Dan Lutz. Robert.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm just here in a strictly legal manner. Somebody else brought up the issue of the government code, and with all due respect, I don't believe the city is operating under any ordinance right now. The government code section 65858 does have a 2-year limit. It actually has a 45-day limit and a way to extend it. I filed a lawsuit yesterday, and there's a hearing today. I was there with Jerry Burge, and there's an OSC hearing on October 13th to consider the matter, but the judge did feel it was sufficient to set it for a hearing on the legality of your current ordinance. It is over, and you're really operating without any ordinance right now, in my view, and I think that's going to be the holding in October. And the question's going to be, what are you going to do with all of these pre- and post-ICOs when it's really determined that there is no ordinance right now? And I think to pass an ordinance at this point when that issue is up in the air with the court would be a mistake. I also think that I think this is a kind of a partial remedy. If you're going to deal with something and not the sales, the reality is those 187, they're probably all doing sales. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Lutz. After Dan Lutz, Michael Larson.
Hello. I'm Dan Lutz. I'm the president of the Los Angeles Collective Association. Hi, my name is Dan Lutz. I'm the president of the Los Angeles Collective Association. We were formed basically by collective owners because we felt that we were being persecuted by this body, and we wanted to basically, find out how we can basically survive going forward. I know Robert has basically told you that we have filed the lawsuit, and we do feel that every collective that's basically been opened after the first 45 days is going to enjoy the same status as the ones that were pre-ICO. And I do wish that you would come up with some way of incorporating a nice path for us to follow so that we can all become, legitimate in your eyes. I do also think that we have a problem with determining what a sale is and what's not a sale. We're forced by the state to get resale licenses, and so we're just in confusion. We get donations for our product to cover our costs.
Thank you very much. We have Michael Larson, Granny Berry, and Jennifer Farr.
Good afternoon, Michael Larson, Public Safety Director of the Eagle Rock Neighborhood Council in Eagle Rock. Good afternoon, council members. On behalf of the fine people of Eagle Rock, I would like to thank you for your hard work, time, and attention in creating a new ordinance for medical marijuana dispensaries in Los Angeles. We strongly encourage this committee, city attorney, and the council to stay focused on creating an unflinching, strong, and well-enforced ordinance, keeping in mind that the undeniable mess that has been created in LA by the lack of such an ordinance. I won't attempt to detail the specific concerns or recommendations regarding the current drafts, but I will urge this committee to reach out and include the neighborhood councils in the deliberations. We have a great deal of expertise and resources to offer on this issue, and we would appreciate being more included in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, something. Sure. Mr. Larson, if you could also, my office would love to work with the neighborhood council on this issue. Tara Devine is my planning director, and we know each other from what we worked on. So please, I look forward to working with you. I just saw this ordinance for the first time it was released to us this morning, so we would love to hatch it out with our neighborhood councils on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Graham Barry, Jennifer Farrell, and then Barry Kramer and Oliver Summers. Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Graham Barry, representing the law offices of Stuart Richland, who represents many of the 187 and hardship applicants. We congratulate the City Council on this proposal and look forward to making some written submissions. However, we urge the committee to consider increasing the exemption from less than 2 people to less than 10 people. The definition of a collective is 3 people or more. State law permits patients to use, possess, and associate. The City Council here has permitted primary caregivers to service up to 10 patients, qualified patients, and this law should be consistent with that. Smaller groups should not have to submit the paperwork that the larger groups have to, and so therefore we're urging the definition be 10 people or less, not subject to regulation.
Thank you, sir. Jennifer Farrell, Barry Kramer, and Oliver Summers, and then we'll have Sal Saunders. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Reyes, Zine, and Huizar. I was able to read Councilmember Zine's draft ordinance last week. Yesterday, the Greater Los Angeles Caregivers Alliance, a group of collective owners and operators who have been regulating ourselves since 2005, sent a letter to both of you gentlemen detailing a few changes that we think are necessary. Today, I took a quick look at the City Attorney's draft, and of course, I am not in favor of that because it only addresses cultivation and not the storefront facilities that already are in existence. We need to come to reality and realize that we're already here. We need to be regulated as we've been working for several years now. So please, if we could go back to your draft and start working forward from there, it would be much appreciated. So thank you very much.
Barry Kramer, Oliver Summers, and Lucille Saunders.
Hi, my name is Barry Kramer. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I am an operator of one of the 187 dispensing collectives that is registered with the city. I'd like to echo Jennifer Farrell's comments here that the city attorney's office seems to be looking at some old form of these regulations. What I've read that Chairman Reyes had put out, the ordinance that he put out, seems to be on the right track. I hope you'll continue in that vein. I also hope that you'll pay attention to the letters that GLACA, the Greater Los Angeles Collective Alliance, and ASA, Americans for Safe Access, has sent to each one of you, going over point by point recommendations and amendments to what you had put out there, Chairman Reyes. And I would appreciate you looking at those. I think they address a lot of what the so-called legal minds in this room have said, and I think that you'll find them very illuminating. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Oliver Summers, Lucille Saunders, and Sarah Armstrong.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing from me. My name is Oliver Summers, and I operated a pre-ICO collective called 420 Compassion Center. I followed every single rule that this committee has bestowed upon the cannabis community. I spent 14 months looking for a location that was 1,000 feet from sensitive use area and every other arbitrary rule you guys came up with. In 2007, I received the DEA letter, and I shut my doors. You guys asked me to fill out a hardship and not open until you heard and acted on it. For 2 years, I have been sitting and waiting for you guys to do something. I've not been operating. And I don't know why everybody was saying I get rich. I rent an apartment, I lease a car, and I have no savings account, and I'm $50,000 in debt. So I have failed to see where I'm getting rich off of selling medical cannabis, apparently selling, that is, to the patients out there. And I'd like to say that when you start looking at regulations, to please listen to the community. We have been doing this for a long time. We are the ones who are going to give you the proper information on how to run these things properly, not misinformation that's going to be saying that we can't do this or we can't do that. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Lucille Saunders from the La Brea Willoughby Coalition. I live at 843 North Detroit Street. From Melrose to Waring, the 700 block of La Brea, at 730, 735, and 740 are medical marijuana dispensaries. At 731, there's a synagogue. This is what our neighborhood is dealing with. This is what our community is dealing with, this proliferation of medical marijuana dispensaries and all the allied problems that you've heard, and I appreciate your offering your openness to the discussion, to the comments, and that we will have an ordinance that really will be regulated and standardized for qualified medical need. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have Sarah Armstrong, Andrew Roto, Don Duncan, and Jose Luis Hernandez, and I believe it's Julie Bowen.
Are we allowed to yield our time to someone else?
No.
Okay. My name is Sarah Armstrong. Several years ago, I stood in front of the full council and asked them to convene a working committee to help you write your ordinance. You heard my plea and you convened the working committee. I would like you to bring that working committee back to meet exclusively with Denizine to try and work out the persistent problem of you wanting full disclosure of all members of dispensaries, particularly cultivators. I know the police are probably tired of busting grows, seeing the bus go south because it is medical. We need to address this. Patients need their constitutional protections. They need the warrant protections. When you fail to make it safe for them, the sick and the dying, you do a disservice to them that is as great as the disservice that's done when the police can't do their jobs because they don't have the information they need. So please bring the working group back to meet with Councilman Zine. Try and work out a way to make it safe and private for patients, but allow the police the access they need. Thank you.
Okay. Andrew Roto, Don Duncan, Jose Luis Hernandez, I believe it's Julie Bowen, and Humberto Martinez. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. I'm Andrew Raydell, and I was looking through this proposed regulations, and I find it amazing that you're trying to make it harder for people to get medical marijuana with these types of suggestions where they have artificial distinctions between getting cash all up at front for a collective and being able to go to some location and be able to pick it up on a as needed basis seems just arbitrary and ridiculous. As far as the danger to the community, I don't see how you could say that well-regulated shops, and we have examples of them all through Los Angeles where there have been no robberies, where they've been safe, where even the neighbors don't have any complaints about them. How can that not be the way that you want to follow to create the regulations to make not only a safe environment for the city, but also to render an important medical product to each of the citizens? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Don Duncan, a resident of Los Angeles, and the California Director of Americans for Safe Access. We heard a lot of comments today regarding over-the-counter sales, and I want to reiterate that the sales of cannabis within the membership of a collective and cooperative are legal under our state law. I know that the city attorney's office disagrees with that analysis, and their guests today were very much on the talking points. But the fact is that the Health and Safety Code recognizes that inside the context of a legally organized and operated medical cannabis collective or cooperative, those sales are legal. If you'll refer to the case law in Councilmember Zine's motion, you'll see that that has been upheld in the courts as well as specifically articulated inside the statutes. So I want to encourage you to delay no longer. I can't believe that 2 years after the fact we're still here having a conversation about whether or not collectives and cooperatives are legal and whether or not cannabis can be sold. The answer to the question as to why cities like Sebastopol, San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, Santa Barbara, the County of Los Angeles, why they can adopt ordinances regulating medical cannabis provision is because it is legal in this state. And so I would call on you to heed the voters' call and pass these regulations with the suggested improvements as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
A question.
Question?
Question from Mr. Duncan.
Come on up, please. I'm
Have you
sorry.
had any meetings with the city attorney's office or the district attorney's office to resolve the conflict between your comments, our observations, and their statements?
I have met with representatives of the city attorney's office and expressed our point of view. We provided them with the same documentation I provided to the council members on several occasions, and they simply disagree.
About a year and a half ago, we had several meetings in the Public Works, and I believe you were in one of the sessions that we had.
That's correct, yes.
With the city attorney and with the various departments, so this has been a very long discussion, too long.
It's a long disagreement. We recently met with Jane Usher and several other senior people in the city attorney's office, and while they were very respectful and responsive to our comments, they just do not agree with that analysis.
Based upon what? Why do they disagree with your position regarding the exchange of money, whether it be a credit card or cash? The collective, as we heard testified by the city attorney representative and the representatives from Long Beach and district attorney's office, I mean, they're on one side of the page and you're on the other side of the page. Why can't there be a bridge? What's the issue?
Well, when I read the statute, sales within the collective are specifically authorized under 11365.775 and SB 420, and the courts in Usacano, in the Newcomb decision, in Butte County, and Holcomb, they've upheld that organizational model and the exchange of cash for cannabis.
Now, what about the case from California Supreme Court?
The Minch decision does not apply to collectives and cooperatives. It applies only to primary caregivers. And collectives and cooperatives do not make a claim under the state law to be primary caregivers for their members. That was actually settled in '98 in the Prone decision. In the specific case of Minch, you had a grower who was attempting to claim protection under the law to be a primary caregiver. That's not what the collectives and cooperatives do. They join together patients and caregivers to collectively produce medicine, but the collective itself is not representing that it's a primary caregiver. So in this regard, the Minch decision is irrelevant.
But that's what they're banking on. And they're citing that as the latest interpretation from the court and using that as the basis for their decision.
It would be inappropriate to use the Minch decision as a basis for a decision about collectives and cooperatives. The collectives and cooperatives were addressed by the appellate courts in Usacano and some of the other cases in your motion. So that's where we should be looking for guidance on collective and cooperative associations.
Did you give that information to the city attorney's office?
Yes, we did.
And what was the response?
They did not specifically respond to that point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for that.
That's fine. Hello, I'm Judy Bowen. Thank you for giving me this time today. I'm the Vice President of the South Carthay Neighborhood Association, and there's been a proliferation of medical marijuana dispensaries in our neighborhood, on Pico, on La Brea. I am in full support of medical marijuana dispensaries. I hold a prescription for medical marijuana because of a long-term illness. I've been in dispensaries that are run very well, and I've been in dispensaries that have popped up in the last couple of years that I felt that my life was in danger from just walking through the door. So I beg you to please don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I have a brown thumb. I can't grow anything. Please don't take away our dispensaries. Please regulate them. Thank you.
Jose Hernandez. I'm a business owner. I own a small pomegranate juice company where Councilman Juarez has actually bought some of the juice at the Eagle Rock Farmers Market. I just wanted to make a statement. Please do not limit the amount of collectives within LA City. By limiting or assigning 187 permits, we'll create an OPEC-style group, which will not be in the best interest of the patients. By allowing the free market and the patients to have choices where to go will be the best interest of the patients, and I think that's what's most important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Roberto Martinez, Cheryl, I believe it's Archer, then Virgil Grant, and then Kyle Kawadak. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Humberto Martinez. I am a member of Los Angeles Association of a Collective Association. As of yesterday, once again, we have filed the lawsuit against the city. I own and operate a medical marijuana collective. Prior to that, I needed to obtain medical marijuana for my issues. I want to make sure that the collectives stay in the neighborhoods because there are a lot of sick people out there that need it, and it's a different form of medication that doesn't make you sick. Like certain pills out there, certain drugs that they give you do make you ill, make you sick. There's a lot of patients that suffer from cancer, AIDS, and other ailments, and we should be able to supply them with the medical marijuana that they need for them to feel better. And some of the patients can't travel that far, so maybe I just want you guys to find a solution so we can all continue and supply and support these people that are sick. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Would that be Cheryl Eichley? Yes, that's my name, Cheryl Eichley.
Yes.
Are we still giving addresses 11448?
That's 11448?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't able to read the city attorney's draft yet. It just came out this morning. I did read the other draft that we were considering. I am asking you to amend the draft ordinance. I sent you an email. I hope that you got it. I hope it's part of the public record. And I do agree with the letter that Don Duncan sent you and the recommendations that Americans for Safe Access did send over. I had my own letter with a few other amendments that I felt were important. Basically, I don't agree with this city attorney's office. I wanted to mention one thing about Minch. He was a man growing out of his home and not providing medical cannabis at a storefront location. And I wish you would focus on the storefront locations and not the cultivation of medical cannabis, because I'm unable to cultivate for myself. I do rely on these dispensaries, and so I rely on you to regulate them. I've been waiting for over 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Virgil Grant. I am on the steering committee of Greater Los Angeles Caregivers Alliance. I'm also one of the 187 collectives that are here in Los Angeles. Not going to stand here and beat the drum. I think my colleagues have done that already. But I will say, adopt sensible regulations for Los Angeles. We need them. We've been asking for them for 2 years. It's way past time. Let's get the job done, do it right, be smart about it. I know you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyle, Cardock, Jim Bush, and then Jeff Jones.
Hi, my name is Kyle Kawaduk. Back in 1996, well, first I was told that if you worked hard to change the laws, you could change the laws through the system. And we worked hard back in 1996, and we passed Proposition 215 with 56% of the vote. But here we are 13 years later, and the city's still trying to make it so that it's impossible for me to get my medicine. That if I want to go to a dispensary that's in my neighborhood, it's going to be impossible, and you're driving me to the black market. And what am I supposed to think? It's making me think that all the work we did was for nothing. It's making me think that that all those things that people were telling me when I was growing up was a lie. And it's just ridiculous. The only thing I agree with you people on is, with these city council members on, is that I'd like to see pesticides not put in our medicine and make sure that our medicine's free of pesticides. But outside of that, you're just making me think that Prop 215 is a joke. Thank you.
Thanks, Swan. Jim Bush, Jeff Jones, and David Lozano. Just call up, please. Norman Welch, I believe.
Hello, my name is Jeff Jones. I work with the Patient ID Center, and again, I thank you, Honorable Chairman Reyes and others with this Plum Committee to take this important issue up forward. I would mention this, and I think there's a simple answer for all those communities that have moved forward, and it takes a little bit of courage and a little bit of compassion, and I think that this body has been trying to get to the bottom of that, and it's been taking a lot of flack from reefer madness folks that simply don't want to follow with what's real. The reason that the City of Oakland moved this forward so quickly is they had leadership of a council and current Attorney General that was then Mayor Brown, who said that this could work, that this could be something that is plausible, and the control that has been offered there has made the neighborhood city groups, the population at large, and the community of Oakland much better off, because regulation leads to control, leads to the ending of all this nonsense, more or less, this reefer madness of us not getting to the grip of what we need to do, which is regulation and make it safe and affordable for these patients. That was what was instructed by the voters of Prop 215. All I ask is that you don't make these collectives more restrictive than they need to be. Make it simple for patients to get in and out of, and make it not bound by a state ID card. But city attorney regs make it bound by a state ID card, which is voluntary.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jerry Bush, and I believe it's Norma Welch. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Indeed, the way I understand the law does not require a patient.
What's your name and address, please?
My name is David Lizama.
Okay.
Indeed, the state law does not require a patient to have a state ID issued by the county. A doctor's recommendation is acknowledged as being legal. So that is actually kind of moot. In terms of compensation, cash at over-the-counter sales, what other model of compensation are we discussing? If you go to the co-op in Santa Monica, the produce co-op, you go in there with your pumpkins, they're not going to accept that as compensation for you wanting to take out oranges. Everyone there who goes to that co-op has to tender cash in order to get their produce. Now, on the surface, I suppose I don't oppose some sort of other system other than cash, but you're going to have some sort of model of compensation, because the law, SB 20 and Prop 215 say, SB 420, it says reasonable compensation, and I think that's meaning money, cash. So let's think of something intelligent if you're not going to have cash.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Jim Bush, Norma Welch, Kevin Lopez, Dale Clare, these folks are here. Amanda Bazin, like to come on up, sir? Any of the ones I've called?
I heard like 4 or 5 before mine.
Okay, but they're responding, so just come on up so we can keep it moving.
Good afternoon. My name is Dale Clare. I reside at 630 Maslin Avenue. I work with the Medical Cannabis Association, the Medical Cannabis Safety Council, and Oaksterdam University for education in the medical cannabis industry and movement. I actually work with several city councils around the state to work on laws that are friendly to law enforcement entities as well as cities and the patients that they're trying to provide for. This is about bringing best practices to these organizations so that we can have faith in the business that they're practicing. This can happen through self-regulation, which it started already with groups like GLACA. The MCA is on a statewide level of what GLACA is trying to do here in Los Angeles. I offer up the model of taxation and regulation. It's been successful in several other cities that have been mentioned today. Oakland has the opportunity to inspect the books and have an open, honest relationship with the facilities that are attempting to do business in that city, as well as others like Sebastopol. I invite you to look at their regulations. Also, we have a tested, secure verification system aside from the state card I'd like to look at. Thank you for your time.
If anything I'm ready to submit to us, we will welcome that as well. Thank you. Jim Bush, just come on up, folks. What's your name?
I'm Amanda Brazel, also with Oaksterdam University, and I just wanted to say that provision 3D within the draft ordinance that is before the council, I would love to see it include the Patient ID Center ID card. It does 24/7 verification. It's only $40 versus $175 with the state card. It's also the system that the state card is based on up in Alameda County. It is the card that is used to issue state ID cards, and it is the same Patient ID Center. So I would would love to see that added on, as well as I just wanted to say the 3N provision, which basically identifies growers to the LAPD, considering that the LAPD does work with the DEA and that the growers really are kind of almost the least protected under the law, and growing isn't easy, as many patients here have testified to. You know, we're not talking about gang members. We're talking about patients and providers, and the federal government may see them as criminals, but the patients here see them as heroes. They're providing them their life-affirming medicine that is very much needed. Thank you.
Hello, William Lopez, California Wellness Collective in South LA. I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about safety. I've had my club open for 5.5 months. There's been 2 stabbings, an armed robbery, none of which are at all linked to my facility, all within 200 feet, one of which was a low-income housing facility that was holding a gentleman that was mentally ill, stabbed 2 people, and I believe 1 gentleman died. Our facility has actually cleaned up our neighborhood. There's less loitering in our corner. We're off of Slauson near Hoover, which is, you all know, the most dangerous neighborhood right now to date, according to LA Times. So we're servicing predominantly African Americans that are over 35, a great community of people that are not getting good resources that I would say are abundant in Van Nuys, Reseda, Woodland Hills, the West Side. I invite any of you to come to my facility. My security system was installed by a company that currently services a pharmaceutical company. They communicate regularly with the DEA. I spent over $100,000 on my facility. It's very, very tight.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a former EMT. I'm not an idiot.
Thank you very much.
You should take everybody one by one and not the 187 and separate.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello, Honorable Chairman and Committee. My name is Abraham Nisley. I work with the Tax and Regulate Cannabis Initiative for the 2010 ballot here in California. The reason that we've put this together is because currently our system's failed, and I would currently encourage you to pass recommendations for regulations as promptly as you can. The reason this problem's going on is that it hasn't happened yet. I live in Oakland. I live a block away from Oaksterdam University, and they've helped rebuild Oakland. We're at 19th and Broadway. 19th and Franklin is where I work. 2 years ago when I started, there weren't any restaurants open on the weekend. Why? Because there's no people on the weekend. Now there's hundreds of people coming down to a safe community that's been rebuilt, that has restaurants, that has coffee shops, that has the support of the community. Why? Because we regulated 5 years ago, and I would encourage you to do the same. The failure to do so creates the problems and also fails to give you the opportunity to rebuild Los Angeles in the way that we'd like to see as citizens of California. So if we can come together, we can solve this problem, and I'd encourage you to help.
Darcy Jules, James Sean. Brad Burns.
Hi, my name is Darcy Hughes. I'm work with Organica, one of the pre-186, and I just would like to ask you to please use the help of the people who've been working in this industry for the last 7 whatever years. Please talk to Don Duncan. Please talk to the people that you've seen today. Help them help you work on these ordinances. It is very important that these people have a right and safe access to their medicine and healthy medicine.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brad Burns, Victoria Zavala, James Shaw.
Hello, my name is James Shaw. I'm the director for the Union of Medical Marijuana Patients. And I stand before you today rather humbled by the presentation that we received from the City Attorney's Office and the City Attorney from Long Beach. And I'm just amazed that we've spent all these years as advocates attempting to understand the law and implement regulations that can make a difference for our member organizations, to hear that the city attorney wants to overturn and decide against all of the California law that is being decided in the courts. It's just so painful for me to see all that. And and wonder about the challenges that face you as a Plum Committee to make a decision about all this. And so I just want you to consider that, to consider all the opportunities that you have to consult with patient organizations like the union, like ASA, like GLACA, all these organizations that are putting out a lot of effort toward helping the city understand the laws and wrangle with the situation.
Thank you, sir. Brad Barnes and Victoria Zavallo.
Good afternoon, Brad Barnes. I'd just like to say thanks for listening today. I know it's a long process and it's a lot of issues. I'd like to submit a few comments in writing, things that they haven't been addressed today, and there might be a couple of, if you're really considering what you have, what Chairperson Reyes submitted, I guess, a couple of days ago, there are some issues that might need to be fine-tuned, a couple of little loopholes you might want to consider. So if I can submit, I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you for your time.
I did not, unless I'm mistaken, I called Mona Welch. Are you still here? No, we spoke. And how about Jim Bush? Bush? Okay. I believe that covers all the folks who submitted cards. Okay, sir, please.
I hope you weren't trying to not let me speak.
Not to worry.
Councilman Reyes, Richard Eastman, citizen of Los Angeles since 1976, founder of medical marijuana in Los Angeles, person living with AIDS, about to go to the White House in a couple of weeks on October 10th because the National Park Service gave me a permit for a rally in Lafayette Park. And when President Obama got elected, when I was at the Democratic Convention last year, a few months after I was there, he listened to the 3,000 patients there. And I hope you've listened to the patients today, because when I go to Washington, D.C., and I meet with Eric Holder and President Obama eventually, just like I did when I met with President Clinton many years ago, I'm hoping that the great city of Los Angeles, where I've resided for the past 30 years, and I almost died from AIDS, will listen to the voters of the great state of California, and Dennis Perone and Richard Eastman, and all the other people that have testified for 13 years in 13 states, and I'm here today because I'm horrified by reefer madness that I've heard this afternoon. And what about liquor stores that sell cigarettes to teenagers? What about the drunks on Skid Row that are crawling in the gutter, and there is no medical marijuana patients ever crawling in the gutter? And what about these people that you sell liquor to and cigarettes? Okay? This is about people with AIDS and cancer and glaucoma and multiple sclerosis. And I'm serious. When I go to Washington, I hope you have a good draft prepared or something coming up in the next couple of weeks, and you do not close down everything, because we fought for 13 years. Thank you very much.
I think we heard you loud and clear in council as well. I want to thank all of you for your presence and your patience, and we're trying our best to come up with a balanced policy. I'd like to offer to my colleagues if we can continue through A, B, C, and D. It gives us time to look at the ordinance. As Councilman Zara stated, we received it this morning. There's more discussion needs to occur. There's quite a bit of information that came to the public comment period. We have some materials that are submitted in writing, and those will be all read as we continue to move forward. And believe me, I, for one, would like to get this done, reach a conclusion. It's been almost 2 years now, and so we're trying our best to reach closure. Colleagues, any comments or questions?
Just briefly, Mr. Reyes, I know that, there's been a ordinance submitted today by the City Attorney's Office, and there was one that was previously being worked on by yourself and Mr. Zine. In terms of what I asked my staff to focus on, to analyze and speak with people about which one we're going to use as a template or which one we're working with. Are we working with both? Should we address both? Are we going to create a new one? Which one is the one that we're working with?
What we heard today was for lack of a better word, a collapsing of different elements of each and trying to reach a middle ground. But that's still up for discussion. What we're trying to do is move this to the next level in an attempt to get to implementation. Because once this ordinance is written, we have to also look at building and safety, all the various departments, and how we process. And that's been the meat of the discussion going back 2 years is you have one perspective that says it should be done one way, we have an interpretation law that states another, and we're trying to reach a middle ground, and that's been the painful process of trying to get to that middle ground and understanding what's helpful for the city.
Okay. Thank you. And again, I just want to reiterate that a number of jurisdictions within the state of California have taken different approaches as to how to deal with the state law that permits for medical use of marijuana. If you've heard the comments of council members and the approach we're taking, we obviously are moving towards a path that would allow safe access to medical marijuana. And I want to encourage everyone who's been part of this dialogue to continue to be part of it, because we obviously haven't come up with the ordinance that we need, the regulations that we need to make sure that happens. But unlike other jurisdictions who straight up prohibited, the city of Los Angeles is moving that direction. However, there are some major issues that are outside our ability to control for this safe access of medical marijuana that I believe we will need to address in other forms, such as how do we regulate those doctors that indiscriminately provide these prescriptions to those who do not have a medical condition. And that is one issue that I hope we could address in some other format, may not be in this ordinance. And certainly today the issue that caught my attention as well is the issue of whether we should, through this ordinance, look at the product and the content of the product that is being dispensed, whether that it does pose a health and safety issue or not, and if we should look at that more intently in our ordinance or not. Because if we're going to say, yes, we're going to allow for the dispensing of medical marijuana, and it may be a health and safety issue, we should control for that somehow, and if it's testing or any other format or whatever regulations are in the new ordinance, we should definitely look at that as well. There's just some issues that we could hopefully take up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Zane, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the folks that were here at 10 o'clock this morning, came before council, and they're still here at 4:35 on this Tuesday. This started when I introduced a moratorium regarding either 186 or 187 locations to bring a semblance of order and a semblance of community connection. And now we're pedaling backwards. I'll be very candid with you. The abuse, there's no question. I think everyone will admit there's abuse of the system, abuse of the system by some doctors. I don't believe there's a middle ground. We're either going to support the medical marijuana for legitimate use, or we're not going to support the issue of collectives as described by the city attorney, the Long Beach City Attorney District Attorney's Office. The aspect of a collective only, I don't think is workable in the city of Los Angeles with 4 million people. I think if we're going to do something, it has to be something that's legitimate, that has the checks and balance, that permits the inspections, etc. And there's obviously a fee involved in that. Now, how that's worked out, I don't have the answer. I've personally visited 3 locations. Visited one location with Mr. Reyes, one location with Mr. Rizar, and I visited one location where a robbery and a shooting took place of the proprietor on Ventura Boulevard. I've been to 3 locations. So I've seen how they work. I've seen the different prices on the wall and the chalkboard. So I'm familiar with the operations. I don't think the city of Los Angeles is in a position to break the law and go against the wishes of the city attorney and district attorney. We are not advocating breaking the law. There's obviously a dispute between the advocates and our elected city attorney, our elected district attorney, and we need to reflect on their observations, their interpretation, and we need to come up with what's going to work and not break the law. If Oakland's breaking the law, that's Oakland's decision, and I don't advocate breaking the law coming from law enforcement. If we can't break the law, we change the law, we make it work. That's what the law is about. You work within the boundaries of the law. The issue of pesticides troubles me. The fact is, whether it's a small quantity or a large quantity, it's not worth getting people sick. So I think there needs to be that aspect, that what you're getting is an actual product that's going to help you and not cause additional harm to you. So putting all this together, after all this time, and the moratorium is now going to expire in March 2010, I hope that with this committee, and Mr. Reyes is the chair of this, very diligent in his efforts, and Mr. Weezer and myself, we can get the district attorney, the city attorney, to somehow read the interpretation, somehow get whatever interpretation needs to be done. But I find it difficult that one interpretation says you can do this, one interpretation says you can do that. Again, I'll emphasize that this council has gone on record, along with the chief of police, supporting medicinal marijuana for legitimate use of people who need it. We have not wavered from that position, but what we have is the interpretation of our legal scholars who are giving us direction, which we pay them and we elect them to give us that direction, and we are not in a position to break the law. I think once we can get through that obstacle, then I think we'll find some success, and I hope it happens before March of 2010. I find the proliferation disturbing to the communities. The neighborhood councils complain, chambers complain, and the more and more that open that are flagrantly violating are causing a disservice to the legitimate operation, the legitimate operators who are there taking care of people. So hopefully, for what we have now in this third draft from the city attorney's office, we can resolve and get that distinction between a collective and a dispensary, where I think you find a distinction between the two, and we can come to a resolution and put this to rest, so those that need it can use it without fear of arrest, and those locations can dispense without fear of apprehension or incarceration. Until that point comes, we're still going to be caught in this quandary of what's going to happen and who's going to be legit, who's not going to be legit. And until that day comes, we're all with a big question mark. I hope that question mark is answered sooner or later. And again, I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'd like to recommend to our colleagues that we continue through A, B, C, and D for 1 week, and we instruct the city attorney, and I thank them for working with the CRA and our offices and reaching this middle ground, and I want to continue pushing this every week until we get this done. 2 years is too long, and we need to reach closure, so we'll be working on this and getting this done as soon as possible.
Just one more thing, Mr. Chair, if we could tell the advocates, in the future, if it comes to this committee, you direct your question to this committee, everything that's discussed here will eventually go back to council, and I would just appeal to you to have your issues addressed here in this body. When it's finally done, we can go to the full council and discuss it with them, but when we're duplicating it, it really doesn't do anything except draw it out even longer and longer. So we have the right to appear in both, but I would prefer if we can do it here. Once we get the package done, we take it there, it's wrapped, it's delivered, and everybody's happy, and then we can all give accolades to the full council when we finally get this resolved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Roberto, let's move to item number 8, then number 10, and folks on here in 8 and 10, again, look at the job, I don't have such an agenda, and that you had to go through this, but it's very important as well. So, I don't know, Roberto?
Yes, Councilor, what's before you is an M&D and an appeal by Steve Sipp. It is appealing the action of the North Valley APC, which to approve the variance for an auto impound yard, and also to include language regarding the absence of a wall, and this is in CD12.
So let's do this. Let's get the report. I understand there's some discussion while this meeting is being conducted, and I'd like to ask him, go through all the speaker cards if still necessary, but let's hear your report first. And I'll be asking Councilor Smith's office if they'd like to speak and give us a sense of reality check as to we go through all these cards or don't we? Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Okay, Nicholas Brown, Office of Zoning Administration. The zoning administrator on the subject case that is before you. Mr. Zipp, the appellant, owns a property that is approximately 17,000 square feet, zone M1. And in April of 2003, that property received a zone variance from the Office of Zoning Administration. It received a variance to allow a non-city official police garage, and it required a variance because it was within 300 feet of residential. The adjoining property that is next to Mr. Zipp's property is approximately 32,000 square feet, also zone M1. In 2008, I approved a variance for the exact same reasons that Mr. Zip, the appellant, received his approval. The case was appealed to the North Valley APC, and that action that I took was sustained. Now, there are some differences between the two approvals, and I'd like to identify what those three differences are.
Okay.
One is the approval in 2008 actually required approximately 15 mitigation measures through the CEQA process, compared to the approval in 2003 was a CE, categorical exemption, and has no mitigation measures. Another difference is that the action I took was at a public hearing versus the action that was took next door on Mr. Zip's property. The appellant was a waived public hearing. The difference being that the case that I had before me had full discussion, where we had full dialogue of the issues, and the determination did reconcile the conflicting interests and the issues that were presented. And another difference is that the action I took had an expiration period of 10 years versus the action that the Office of Zoning Administration took on Mr. Zip's property actually was in perpetuity. Difference being that this is a zone variance. It's a use that is normally not permitted in the zone. To not put an expiration period on a case like that is to allow it in perpetuity, and therefore is a backdoor approach to a zone change. I believe that in the case that is before you, that would be inappropriate and has therefore a expiration period. Now, I read the appeal, and the appeal that is before you is the same appeal that I saw that was before the APC, and it was deliberated upon, and in that case, with those issues, the APC sustained the zoning administrator by a vote of 5-0. The issues that I heard or that I see raised in this appeal are, one, that there is a wall that divides a property that is creating problems for Mr. Zip, the appellant, that they don't have full access to their property. I would like to note that that is an issue not before this appeal body. That is actually an issue that is before, at this time, before LADOT and before the Department of Building and Safety. Another issue that I saw raised was that related to the lack of adequate environmental, as I noted in the case that's before you, that there are 22 pages of environmental clearance that include 15 mitigation measures, and all of them consider how this project can operate without impact to the surrounding community.
So to be succinct, not to cut you short or off, but what is before us? If you're telling me what is not in front of us, what is in front of us?
What is before you, as I see in the appeal letter, are three issues. One regarding the flawed M&D. Another is that there are trash cans that are stored by the applicant, in this case, stored in front of the property, and that also there is an issue that there may be additional uses on the subject site and therefore requiring a commercial corner development review versus just a variance. Those matters were all discussed by the APC and with a 5-0 vote agreed with the zoning administrator.
Okay. Now, Ms. Winger, I understand that there's been some, thank you, sir. Thank you. Ms. Winger, Phyllis Winger, are you in the room? There you are. It's only been a few hours, so hang in there. My understanding is that there's a discussion amongst the parties, and is there anything you'd like to share with us, or should I go through the public hearing card?
I would prefer the public hearing. I think Mr. Brown encapsulated the situation extremely well and laid it all out for the committee's consideration.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, William Keller, the appellant is Steve Rapp, represented by William Keller. Is that correct? Yes. I'd like to come on up and let's hear from the appellants first.
Good afternoon, Chairman, council members. My name is Bill Kohler. My business address 12522 Moore Park Street, Studio City, California. I'm an attorney and I represent Mr. Zip. I submitted a brief to you yesterday. I hope you gentlemen have had an opportunity to review it. There is one minor correction at page 3, line 13. The word should have been appellant as opposed to applicant. I do take issue with Mr. Brown's statement that the wall is not an issue before you today. As one of the findings that had to be made talks about health and safety, and I would quote from Mr. Brown's report that in finding 4, the granting of such variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in the same zone or vicinity in which the property is located. At the time of the hearing, the wall that Mr. Brown alluded to existed. This is a wall that runs the full length of the property, and as a result thereof leaves Mr. Zip with a driveway of approximately 10 feet wide that is not large enough to, wide enough rather, to allow large vehicles such as a moving van, which is one of his tenants, to negotiate the driveway. It also precludes circulation because there is no room to turn around, which then runs afoul of the general plan, which discusses both safety and circulation issues. So I believe that as the site existed at the time of the hearing, that was one finding that had to be made, that the existing condition that was there at the time, which is the wall, that has resulted in the excess Mr. Zip's tenants having to back out onto Parthenia Street. There's no room to turn around. There's been 3 accidents that have taken place since the erection of the wall. Now, as a planning commissioner for 12 years and a current city councilman for another city in the county of LA, I've had the pleasure of sitting before a number of hearings, listening to variances and appeals of variances, and I understand the sanctity of having to make all 5 findings. I submit to you, gentlemen, finding number 4 cannot be made because based upon the circumstances that existed at the time of the hearing, that this was materially detrimental to the public welfare in that it has now created a traffic hazard. I ask that you grant the appeal. Now, in the event you, in your divine wisdom, find that there is the ability to make that finding, I then implore you to condition the granting of the variance that any barrier, be it a wall, a fence, be prohibited, as it has a detrimental effect upon the health, safety, and welfare, and therefore is not in compliance with the general plan. I thank you very much. Is there any questions?
I have no questions. Any questions, colleagues? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Arthur Kazan, and then Steve Zip.
Good evening, council members. My name is Arthur Casson. I am a consulting traffic engineer, registered traffic engineer, and I've been in practice for almost 50 years. The wall is the issue that I will focus on. When the wall was discussed and it could be seen that they were planning to put it in, I met with the district traffic engineer out in the West Valley, and we observed the property. We stood together and watched the operation of the property, and he evaluated the situation and prepared a letter. Here's copies of the letter, and I will hand it out. But based on, I'll read you a few words. Based on a field investigation, very important, a field investigation. Based on the existing conditions, installation of any type of a physical separation in the middle of the driveway is not feasible and cannot be justified. That's the district engineer out in the West Valley. Subsequently, Mr. Rios and his representatives went to another office in the valley, the one in Van Nuys, the planning office there, and by deceiving the person who was on duty at the time, the traffic engineer who was on duty at the time, and not showing him all of the situation, they were able to obtain from that gentleman a approval signature for the wall going down the driveway. When it was pointed out to them what effect that had on the access and circulation for both properties, the Department of Transportation subsequently, last month, August 6th,
I need you to conclude, sir.
Pardon?
I need you to conclude.
Yes. They wrote a letter revoking their approval of the permit for the driveway and telling the building department that the driveway should be taken down.
Thank you very much. Steve Zip, Robert Lamashaw, and then Marcos Portillo.
Yes, my name is Steve Zepp, 18653 Parthenia Street. I gave you the paperwork on this, and I'm happy to see that you're concerned about pesticides. I'm concerned about pesticides and toxic waste. I believe the MND is flawed. It compares Action Towing to Mr. Rios Tennis Day and Night Towing, and Mr. Rios's company's towing company tows large vehicles, semi-trucks, box trucks that possibly could contain toxic chemicals. They have to be unloaded on premises in order for insurance companies to make their assessments of the damage of these vehicles. Many years ago, the city allowed the aerospace industry to run rapid, and they caused brownfields. Rocketdyne is a great example in the Santa Susana Mountains. It's the largest toxic waste dump in the United States. The plating industry, as crazy as it seems, the dental industry dumped thousands and thousands of tons of mercury into our water. This has been changed. The dry cleaning companies have dumped, your local stores for dry cleaning is doing more harm at one time than the cigarette industry is causing cancer. That has been changed. I'm just asking that it should be looked into in reference to the MND that was not done correctly. It compared the same my towing company that I rent to the same other one that hauls larger vehicles and could contain toxics. And CEQA and the federal government, the 325 pages that I gave you, says if you're storing toxic waste, you have to have a plan, you have to be licensed, and I believe day and night towing should be on the premise, but it should be monitored in somehow, in some way, and another study done, whether it's an EIR or something else. We're concerned about pesticides, we should be concerned about toxic waste, and we are upgrading it of a residential neighborhood. That means whatever would flow from us would go down to their neighborhood. I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Lee Ambers.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Robert Lamashaw with JPL Zoning Services. I represent the applicant Day and Night Towing in this matter. You've heard a lot of talk about the wall between the property, and in reality, that wall is really not an issue before you. That is an issue which is currently under adjudication as to property rights and is currently being reviewed by Department of Building and Safety, Department of Transportation. The LA City Code requires that there be a wall around an impound yard, and an impound yard, a variance for the impound yard, is the only thing that is really before you. We will indeed have a wall around the impound yard, but that wall, if you look at the site plans, does not affect the driveway that is in dispute. The question between Mr. Rios and Mr. Zip is a wall which runs down a property line essentially in the middle of the driveway. And there's a question, Mr. Zip has a question, and possibly a valid one, I don't know, that that wall between the two properties would adversely affect his business. He may have an argument there, but that is for Building and Safety, Department of Transportation, and the courts to determine if that wall should be there, if so, how big that wall should be. Our issue is the use of the impound yard. Currently, the dispatch and the towing company are permitted by right on that property. If this use is granted, there will be one tenant on the entire property. So the issue about being a mini mall or commercial corner does not apply. Once we have control of that property, we will be subject to the terms of the variance, which include that trash enclosures be away from the front of the property line, there'll be only one tenant, there'll be a lot of things which the city will now have control over through Mr. Brown's grant that are not currently in place. And this whole issue about the wall between the two properties is a red herring, and I'd ask you to disregard that testimony.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marcos Portillo. I'm the founder and owner of Day and Night Towing. I'm here to ask you guys to give me the opportunity to continue my business. I know it's in your hands that you guys can revoke the opportunity for me to continue the business. I've been in business for the past 11 years. I was one of the youngest owners to be approved by the CHP, the California Highway Patrol, and I worked with them for the past 5 years, and I know what it takes to also run the company when it has conditions on a variance. For the past 7 years, I've been running my business at a 7900 Canoga, which is also conditioned with a variance, and I have never received a complaint from the City of LA, Building and Safety, or any of the departments. So when I moved to this location, which is 2 times bigger from where I'm operating, I know it's not going to be a problem for my business, and it's not going to create any traffic, because vehicles always come and tow trucks come always one at a time. They don't come all at one time. So there's not going to be a traffic issue at the property. And I'm just, I just want to ask you guys to give me the opportunity to continue my business. I started this business when I was 19 years old, and I was, like I said, the youngest Hispanic also honored to be accepted by the California Highway Patrol to work with them. And I've been working for them for the past 6 years, and that's the reason why I'm requiring to have a variance to continue my impound business. So, just try to make your best decision that you guys can do.
How long have you been in business?
11 years.
Are you still the youngest guy?
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. All right. All right. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Lee Ambers, Post Office Box 7570, Van Nuys, California. To reiterate about this wall, a building permit was issued and revoked by the Department of Building and Safety because of the safety issues and the violations of the municipal code as it applies to the safety of the public street and the property next door. A supplement permit was then later issued for that wall, and that wall was based on a plot plan to the building department that differs from the plot plan that was submitted to the zoning administrator. It has different internal circulation. It did not show the property adjacent. It didn't give building and safety any information. And that permit has also been revoked. As we sit here today, both permits revoked, that wall still exists and there's no effort to remove it. Mr. Brown at the APC hearing stated that he would not sign off a building permit with the wall there. It has been agreed by the applicant, it has been agreed by the appellant and by the city that that wall does not belong there. Mr. Brown indicated that he would not sign off a building permit for change of occupancy if that wall exists. But he did not impose a condition. And I know Mr. Brown very, very well. He's a very reputable person. He goes on vacations. He gets sick like all of us, and somebody else could step in his shoes. I would like to see a condition prohibiting any wall, any hedge, any fence, any parking within so many feet of that building. Now, true, there is a need for a wall around the impound yard, but that impound yard is already got an enclosed wall.
Thank you, members. Thank you. Gene Plano and Eduardo Espana.
Good afternoon, Plan Committee members, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Weiser, and Mr. Sain. My name is Eduardo España. My address is P.O. Box. My address is P.O. Box 3453 in Granada Hills. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, here are some of the points we believe to be important for day and night towing case. We request a zone variance from the Los Angeles City Planning Department for the property located on Parthenia Street in Northridge. We need to be able to do law enforcement and private impounds. The property zoning already allow us to do other parts of our business, which are dispatch, towing, and storage. We also need the zone variance to relocate our business from our present location at 7900 Canoga Park in Canoga Park because our landlord LACMTA is now moving on with their Orange Rail project in Woodland Hills. The zone variance was granted to us back in December 24, 2008 by your own city planning department and only after complying with multiple required permits, conditions, and limitations. The property rights issue, such as a black wall fence along the property line, is not a zone variance matter. It belongs in a court of law, and the Los Angeles Planning Department, as well as we know, is not a place to litigate property issues rights. It is our belief that the two property owners, the Rios and the Sips family, are already litigating this same fence wall matter in Los Angeles Superior Court in Van Nuys, where it really belongs. We would like to ask you for help with the following issues: to dismiss Mr. Sips' frivolous, if not malicious, appeal against day and night towing, against the day and night towing zone variance. As I stated before, the fact is our company's request for the zone variance permit is only needed to do auto impounds. The present zoning already allows us to do towing and dispatch businesses. The zone variance already granted to us has nothing to do with property rights issues. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I have Eduardo España. I'm sorry, that was it. Michael Rios. Thank you. And then Gary Klein.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Rios. I reside at 29400 Cambridge Court in Agora Hills. I'm the property owner of the property in question. I've owned the property since 2002, I believe. Well, actually, November 15, 2000. The case here in front of you is about day and night towing, not about a wall. From day one, Mr. Sip, being a bully, has sent us a letter threatening us that he would spend $1 million to keep us from putting up the wall. He also has persuaded their tenants to use our area for their own use. We need the day and night towing approved without the condition of the wall. The wall was something that I chose to put up after 7 years of putting up with a bully that kept on parking on my property, leaking oil on my property, contaminating my property. I have video evidence pictures depicting this. We have a current ongoing case to make the determination if this wall should be there or not. The permit is not revoked. The permit is under review by Building and Safety DOT, pending the case from the Superior Court. That will decide whether the wall stays or not. The other thing that I want to bring up is they have reported numerous accidents in front of the property. I have gone to the LAPD, which one of my family members works there. There has been no reports reported on the entire block from the 1800 to the 1900, unless there were accidents that they did not report to LAPD. And if this was of such an issue, they should have reported them.
Thank you, sir. Gary Klein, then Manuel D. Murillo, I believe, and then Glenda Enriquez. Hello, Mr. Klein.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
It's a long day from code studies, huh?
Yes, long time from code studies. I wanted to speak initially concerning the environmental. When the environmental was done for the variance, they didn't take into consideration full circulation and the blocking of circulation that this wall that has gone up is created, and I therefore think that the environmental is flawed. You have a letter from DOT, actually you have 2 letters from DOT saying that they feel that this is a circulation and safety issue. Secondly, I also believe that it's flawed in the fact that the type of vehicles, and Mr. Zip has told you the type of vehicles that day and night will tow, may contain toxic fluids. The problem here lies from the fact that these are being towed from the freeways. The freeways are approximately 3 miles away from the site, which means that any leakage is going to occur into our city streets. Nothing of that sort was addressed in the environmental, and I do believe that that's a flaw in that environmental. They may address the issue of waste on site, but again, we're talking about going 3 miles from the 101, possibly 3 miles or more from the 118, with fluid leaking into our streets. That was not addressed, and therefore I believe the environmental is flawed. Associate Zone Administrator Brown, when I tried to raise this issue at the APC, said I was raising the bar. Well, as he's testified before, the case next door got a CE. This was given an MND. CEQA allows us to challenge anything and bring these items up.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Lee Murillo, and then we have Glenda Enriquez. Sir?
Hi, Gene Polino. I represent
Gene Polino? Okay,
Mr.
come on up.
Zip, yeah. I just wanted to point out that we did pass out a pamphlet to you, and you can see a copy of the police report showing an accident. So I'm disputing Mr. Rios' testimony that there does not exist police reports. You have one in your hand currently today. And also, many of the blockages that happened on the driveway were not caused by Mr. Zip, but there was a mutual thing. That was a 40 or 50-year common driveway until the wall went up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Manuel Murillo. I reside in I don't reside, but the address there listed is 7900 Canoga. I have a couple things I want to say. One, well, first and foremost, the business next door is Action Towing, correct? Our business is exactly the same business as the one that they're doing. So how can it be that we are not able to operate from that particular property? Another thing that I wanted to say is the current situation with the U.S. already, with the economic status, as well as California, and now the city of L.A., every day there's companies going down, people losing their jobs. I don't want to be one of those statistics, nor do I want day and night towing to be one of those statistics as well. I believe that it is in your hands, and it is in your hands by your decision to be able to allow us to continue running our business there. I am an employee of theirs for the last 4 years because they are good people, honest people, and we are legitimate. We're not here to do something that's not right. We're doing everything right. We've been doing everything right for the past 11 years. I've been with them for the last 4. And I like the people that I work with, and I would like to stay with them, and I would like to keep my job.
Thank you, sir.
That's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker, Glenda Enriquez.
Hello, my name is Glenda Henriquez. I'm one of the co-owners for Day and Night, my brother Marcos, and we are a small family business, practically, operated. You're going to see me in the tow trucks out there because I'm proud of what we do. We're honest people. We're trying to do everything that is right, and unfortunately, we've been fighting for this property for 2 years, spending every single savings and money that we had out there, and we're just in the middle between the two owners of the two properties. We just want to continue our business, provide service for the community. Our employees are happy with us, and we just want to keep our doors open for our business. And like I said, we're just in the middle of the battle of the wall. It wasn't our decision. We just want to open our location there and continue. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I'm sorry, sir.
Would you allow a point of clarification?
No, public comment is closed now. We give everybody the opportunity. Thank you, sir. Colleagues, Ms. Swinger, I'd like to get your perspective or your council district recommendation, if you have one.
Thank you. Phyllis Winger, representing Councilman Greg Smith, Councilman of the district. Unfortunately, as you can tell by the testimony, the wall, whether or not it's part of the case, is a real problem and has been the problem. It's there. It does interfere with access to Mr. Zip's property. It needs to be taken care of. Orders have been written, and there is a process that's going through now that ultimately will take care of it. As far as today and whether or not the use of the property is well served for the towing business, I don't think that there's really an argument. It is. The towing business is definitely proper for that site, and our office supports the decision by the zoning administrator. We believe that the conditions that he placed on the original grant are proper and will also mitigate a lot of Mr. Zip's concerns. So in that vein, the use is appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions? I do have some instructions. We can move on this item. No questions, Councilmember?
No questions.
Okay. So we can move to grant in part and deny in part with additional conditions that hopefully addresses some of the concerns that were raised. We can instruct the Los Angeles Department of Transportation to consider a red curb along both properties to increase line of sight for traffic. A use of a flag man where vehicles must back out onto traffic to make sure we're controlling traffic impact. Conduct an approval of plans review in 1 year to evaluate if there is compliance with conditions and how impacts be mitigated. And finally, to instruct the Department of Transportation and Building and Safety to resolve the issue of the wall with all deliberate speed. So that would be the additional conditions, and it would be denied in part and granted in part. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. That would be action for this committee. Okay, number 10, and the last one.
Councilmember, item 10 is an appeal, and it's also a zone change relative to a 95-unit condo project in CD5.
Okay, we have a staff report on this.
Yes, good afternoon, Councilmember Rose. Jim Tokunaga with the City Planning Department. I'll keep this brief. What you have before you is an ordinance for zone change and height district change, as well as a building line removal for a 95-unit residential condominium project. The project was proposed to be a 14-story, 180-foot in height tower, along with some lower buildings that surrounded the site. The applicants have revised the project, lowered it to 12 stories and 151 feet, and they are here to explain the project, the new project. The City Planning Commission approved the project back in April of this year, the zone change ordinance and the building line removal. There has been an appeal filed on the track map, and the Deputy Advisory Agency, Maya, is here to describe the appeal.
Okay. Anything else, please?
Good evening. Maya Zaitsevsky, Deputy Advisory Agency. I just found out today that they are revising the map to reduce the height of the building to 12 stories. And so I would like to add an additional condition that we get a copy of the revised vesting map prior to the case going to council, and I believe it's next week that it'll be heard, so we can review it and distribute it to the departments. It shouldn't affect any of the conditions of approval, but we just would like to see it before it gets approved by council, if that's what will be happening. The applicant is requesting also to add an additional mitigation measure regarding the Sustainable Employment Housing Initiative on the site, and I would defer to you on whether you want to include that. It would not. It's a volunteered condition.
Okay, say that again.
The applicant is requesting that we place on the track map a condition of approval, number 22A, that's regarding the Sustainable Employment Housing Initiative. And this is the off-site housing that the applicant is providing for people who work at Cedars. And because it's not germane to this track map, I don't think it should belong on the track map, maybe in the zone change. Also, it's a volunteered condition, which we have trouble with enforcement of. So that is all. I recommend that the Plum Committee deny the appeal and sustain the decision of the City Planning Commission.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's hear from the appellants. Like to come on up? The appellants we have, I believe, Lucille Saunders, Keith Nakata, and Matt Smith. Who are the appellants on record? Are they here today? Okay.
Keith Nakata has left his letter with you. He was unable to stay. I'll be speaking to some of the points that are on his letter as well as mine. I'm Lucille Saunders from the La Brea Willoughby Coalition, and we would like to again address the size, although 12 sounds less than 14. The size, when the queue conditions set by our previous councilperson, Zev Yaroslavsky, at 45 feet, because of the residential nature of our community, please address those when you think of the size, the scale, and character of this project. Also, you're going to hear about jobs. We also would like to see jobs, but we're talking about long-term jobs and long-term quality of life in this neighborhood and not short-term construction jobs. It's like we're not looking for WPA work. So we've introduced our documentation, and we'd like for you to address those at your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here that is against the project or against the recommendation? Okay. We do have a handful of cards in support. I can call you all up, or I can ask you all if you want to stand, or if you feel compelled to speak, we're more than happy to hear from you. We have Robbie Hunter or John Choi. I'd like to come on up.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the applicant would like to speak for 2 minutes.
Okay. Does the applicant come on up?
That would be myself, sir.
So what time is it right now?
It is 5:24, and I'm going to be done in 90 seconds.
Okay, so 4.5 hours later you get to speak.
I thank you.
All right.
My name is R.J. Comer of the law firm of Armbruster, Goldsmith, and Delbeck, and I represent the applicant in this project. And I would like to thank the city staff who've worked hard on a project that has been revised several times, and CD5 for their leadership in the project that's before you today. The project has been reduced many times, most recently leading up to here to 12 stories and 152 feet 7 inches. I want to address the Sustainable Employment Housing Initiative condition. The reason it's in the track map is because it's triggered by the recording of the final map. The condominium project is what helps finance that very important public benefit, and so that's why it's in the track map. We'd ask that you keep it in the track map. I also spoke with one of the appellants in this case, their counsel, Mr. Carlisle Hall, appellants for counsel for Burton Way Hotels. He and I agreed that in the interest of time, neither one of us would go into the merits of my defense against his appeal or his appeal. We both submitted letters to the city. He submitted a letter on his appeal. We submitted a defense letter. We'll let those letters speak for themselves as well as the recommendation of staff, and so I won't say more about that appeal. And then the staff report includes a number of information, including community benefits, the amount of support for this project. You have 1,400 documented supporters for this project, and we thank you for your time. We ask that you deny the appeal and support the staff report.
Okay, I know we've waited all day, and you've been very patient waiting as well. I do not want to deny you the opportunity to speak. If you feel compelled to speak, come on up. If We have a whole group of cards here where people would like to come on up and maybe form a line behind this gentleman. If you really feel compelled to speak, you're welcome to come on up.
Yes, thank you, council members. My name is John Choi, and I'm the Economic Development Director for the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. Earlier, we had over 40 union members in the audience, and some of them had to leave. If I could just take a moment and ask all the union members in the House to just stand up and be recognized. So very quickly, I know we've been here for a while. I'm just going to be speaking on behalf of organized labor, and I'm here on behalf of our Secretary-Treasurer, Executive Secretary-Treasurer Maria Elena Durazo, and on behalf of over 800,000 workers and their families, in addition to those in the room today with us today. The Los Angeles County Federation of Labor would like to convey its strong support of the Weatherly Project. This private, unsubsidized residential development project will provide nearly 1,000 union construction and construction-related jobs over a 2-year period. A project labor agreement on a residential project such as this is virtually unheard of. We applaud the decision of this developer to utilize unionized construction workers to build this project. A project of this magnitude is timely, considering the dire straits of our economy. This project will put 1,000 construction workers back to work during a time when many of our trade unions are faced with an unemployment rate of over 30% within its own membership. Furthermore, this developer's willingness to agree to a card check process for their on-site permanent maintenance and security personnel will set precedent and will break an important barrier on private residential projects. In addition to its community benefits, the affordable housing element for workers at Cedars-Sinai makes this a must-support project. As you may recall, the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor officially endorsed the city's mixed-income housing policy last year and has been working hard to get this passed. I can assure you that we consider this project's affordable housing component to be an outstanding example of our work to increase affordable housing for working families in the city of LA. For all these reasons, obtaining your support for this proposed project is a priority for the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, and I hope that you will support the project and allow it to be built with the utmost expediency. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Just for the record, I want to read into the record the folks that have indicated support for the project. Again, if you feel compelled to speak, you're welcome to come on up. But the ones that indicated support is Vincent, I believe it's Ontario. I apologize, hard to read the name. Jeff Jackelberger, Jaime Alexander, Kevin Bass, Piedmont Brown, Ron Miller, Kevin Norton, James Perozzo, I believe, Steve Croner, Mindy Lake, Robbie Hunter, John Troy, I just spoke, Larry Colvin, R.J. Comer, and Larry E. Maldonado. And so your name?
Yeah, my name is Larry Colvin. I'm one of the vice presidents of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I just want to speak in support of this project because of the workforce housing component. It really offers a great opportunity for employees of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The 48 units are on Arnez, within walking distance of the institution. So the many employees that we have that are on the lower pay scale will have a great opportunity with this workforce housing, and it fits in line with what the city's been trying to do with workforce housing. So we're in great support, and it'll help us continue to provide quality care and research for LA. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak? I've called their names, but come on up.
My name is Jeff Jacobberger. I'm the chair of the Mid-City West Community Council, which is the neighborhood council that covers this area. Just one thing I'd just like to urge you is that you actually include the condition about the workforce housing. We on our neighborhood council work very hard with developers to try to craft projects that that are a positive contribution to the neighborhood, and for this project the workforce housing is a really important element, and it's very disheartening to us when we have developers who agree to conditions, everyone's agreed to a condition, and then it doesn't get put into a project, and then we're left with grave concerns about whether it can be enforced. So just urge you to include that.
And I'll ask the staff about that condition. Yes.
Hello, my name is Steve Kramer. I'm president of the Miracle Mile Chamber of Commerce. I'm also an attorney. I'll try to do this in 45 seconds. On behalf of the chamber, we support this project. 3 particular reasons. The positive determination that this developer and his neighbors had in working together for a period of 18 months to get this project to a place everybody could live in was outstanding. The housing component that was discussed regarding Cedars is creative, innovative, and is going to be a real benefit to our community. And finally, this developer is committed in general to the community and is working very diligently with 3rd Street to provide some parking and parking alternatives that are going to make a real difference on 3rd Street. And I thank you for the time.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for your patience.
I've waited this long, I might as well speak.
Okay, I knew that was going to happen.
My name's Mindy Lake, and I'm here to reiterate what I said at the City Planning Commission, that in the 20 years that I've been a community activist representing homeowners, renters, and businesses, I'm an equal opportunity activist, I have never encountered a developer who came forward with the level of community benefits that this developer did, which would truly have an impact on the community, hands down. And he came to us in advance of any negotiations, requests, or demands from anyone. It was upfront and clear. And I would like to say that I'm not specifically supporting the project. I'm supporting his process in bringing the project to the community. And I would only hope that other developers who come forward will raise their commitment to the same level that this developer has, and I ask you to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we'd like to call the council representative, Lisa Trifoletti.
I will try to be brief. Lisa Trifoletti, on behalf of Councilmember Paul Koretz. Although the project received unanimous support by the City Planning Commission, the new council member had spent the last several months trying to improve the project and understand what could be built on the project site as a truly by right project. I believe you have it. I submitted it for the record, but the planning department did clarify in writing that what type of project could be built by right, purely ministerial, without triggering any environmental review. And they have clarified that because 8 out of the 10 lots where the project is located does not have a height limitation, that what the developer could do if he elected to do so would be to develop the 8 lots with approximately 128 units with over 125,000 square foot at an unlimited height without ever triggering any review. And so given the community's concerns about this project and our strong desire to retain a strong influence over what happens here, we, and the council member has, he understands that the project that's now before you is a much greater benefit than what could be done and what any potential negative impacts could happen under the by right scenario. Given that, we appreciate the applicant's multiple concessions. The original project was 140 units. It was brought down to 95. Only 11 net new units and no traffic impact. There's no design review board requirement here, but they're going to go through 4 public workshops to vet the design with the community. Their landscaping is significant. They have publicly accessible open space on the site along 3rd Street and Almont. From the CPC action to today, they have worked to even further minimize the height, lowering it approximately 30 feet than what the CPC approved, and keeping all the other design elements that were so critical to the stakeholders that we have been working with for over 2 years. And you heard about the community benefits. It's unprecedented. It's LEED certified. They have put in $400,000 to the West 3rd Street Business Association to do a public valet program and streetscape improvement. And without that commitment, we would never have been successful in winning an MTA Call for Projects grant. They, in an attempt to replace parking in the area, they're offering 9 spaces on the site for neighborhood parking for rent. And with the loss of the affordable housing, they have worked with Cedars-Sinai at our request to put in 48 workforce housing units for nurses, technicians, and other workforce employees at Cedars-Sinai. And lastly, we have a project labor agreement, so we don't normally see construction jobs of this size with union wages, and this is critical in this economy. So given all of those things combined, we ask that you please deny the appeal and approve the modified conditions and adopt the findings. Thank you.
Okay. I can tell you've been working with this committee for several years now, given the directions that's been advised. So I would, there are no questions, my colleagues, we can move to deny the appeal with modified conditions as recommended by the council staff. And anything else we need to add from the staff?
Yeah, Maya Zaitsevsky, Planning. You just need to verify whether you're going to try to encumber the tract with this condition about the off-site housing. I'd like to get the city attorney to opine on whether that's a good idea or not.
Jerry Burge, City Attorney's Office, as I've been preaching, I guess is the word, for years, we don't like volunteered conditions. They're not enforceable. They mislead the community that we are going to do something, and we would recommend not imposing a volunteered condition. They can separately agree with the community if they like, or they can do various other means to get that result, but we would recommend against a volunteered condition, and there's no basis to impose it but for a volunteer condition.
What are the volunteer conditions?
Well, it's actually, they added this condition number 22A, which deals with the affordable off-site housing. And why I'm concerned about it with the tract is dealing with the particular lot, not which this housing would be located on. It's a Q condition already in the zone change, so it's unnecessary to have it in the tract in addition to the zone change. And then just the other thing is that I think both of the decisions, if you're approving them, I think you actually have to deny in part and grant in part because we're modifying the exhibits.
Okay, we'll do that.
And also be sure that you act on 10A if you are recommending approval of the zone change and the height district change.
Okay, 10A, we will be approving the request, and
10B, you will be granting in part and denying in part,
because
because of the modified conditions.
Right.
Point of clarification, just to make sure, 10A, we're approving the zone and height district change, but the point of clarification I need is that I understand that Maya said there was a revision to the height, and I just want to make sure that the condition that was requested by the applicant is the same one that she's suggesting.
We need to have the applicant submit revised tract maps prior to the case going to council so that they can be distributed. So they had added a condition B to submittal of a revised tract map.
That's on item 10B.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that is only for the tract.
Yeah, but the 22A we're not including in the...
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there's also a point of clarification. On the zone change also, since some of there's a new exhibit coming in with the revised 12-story project, we will have to modify a couple of the conditions as far as the height and the number of stories, but that's just...
We can do that before it gets to council?
Yes, we can do that.
But we can move on with these actions today?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Okay, is that okay, Barbara?
It helps a lot.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so that'll be the Actions Committee, and it looks like we have a unanimous vote. Yep. All right, folks, congratulations. Anybody with public comments? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.